Yes, 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 yes.
Recording in progress.
Santa मतलब you know. Parang ito. Ito. Yung let's switch off this one.
Madam Speaker,
I hear that discussion. Yes, there is no meditation. Medication, yes. Thank you, honorable members. Before I deal with the 8th order of the day, allow me, honorable members, to read the following statement. Today, I received a letter from the Honourable N.F. Shivambu informing my office that item 9 on the order paper, titled Consideration of Report of Joint Committee on Ethics and Members' Interest on Complaints Against Honourable Nyiko Floyd Shivambu, a PMP, is before a court of law. Mr. Shivambu is requesting that the matter be removed from the order paper. A similar letter was received from his lawyers asking for the matter to be referred back to the committee for proper investigation. I've also received a letter from the legal representative of Honourable E.D. Peters in respect of item number 8 in the order paper, titled Consideration of Report of the Joint Committee on Ethics and Members' Interests on Complaints Against Honourable D. Peters, MP, in her former roles as Minister of Transport. The demand was that the matter not be considered today. I would like honourable members to state that these matters were agreed for programming by the National Assembly Programming Committee. In any event, there is no legal impediment currently to these matters being considered before the House today, and will therefore proceed with business as it appears on the order paper. That is where we are, honourable members. The secretary then will read the 8th order.
Consideration of report of the Joint Committee on Ethics and Members' Interests on complaints against Honourable Dipuo Peters, MP, in her former portfolio as Minister of Transport.
I'm informed that there is an agreement that there will be no declarations taken. This is also the case on the following item. Once we have adopted the reports on orders 8 and 9, I will then issue the penalties imposed on the members concerned as recommended. I now recognize the Honourable Chief Whip of the Majority Party. Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. I move that the report be adopted.
Are there any objections?
Thank you, Chair. The EFF objects.
The objections of the EFF will be noted. Are there any other objections? None. We then proceed, honourable members. The 9th order of the day. The report is therefore agreed to, yes. 9th order of the day.
Consideration of the report of the Joint Committee on Ethics and Members' Interests on complaints against Honourable Nyiko Floyd Shivambu, MP.
I now recognize the Honourable, the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Honorable Speaker,
Yes.
I move that the report be adopted. Thank you.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections?
Honorable Chair, we reject the adoption of the report. And may I correct the previous one if you do allow?
Too late, Kaluk Tata, take your seat. Too late, honorable members, take your seat. It's okay. Honorable members, the objections of the EFF will be noted. Are there any other objectives? Objections? None? Now, so if there are no objections, there's just one, the matter is then agreed to. At this point, allow me then, honorable members, to read. Thank you very much. A statement. Honorable members, the charges of breaching the Code of Ethical Conduct and disclosure of members' interest for Assembly and Permanent Council members, of which Honourable Peters and Honourable Shivambu respectively have been found guilty of, is very serious. The committee did not, however, recommend that a reprimand be issued. So there will be no reprimand. The committee found that Honourable Peters breached the code in 3 instances where she failed to act in accordance with the public trust placed in her and to discharge her obligations in terms of the Constitution. The Assembly has agreed that for each instance that the member be suspended from her seat in all parliamentary debates and sittings and from committee meetings and committee-related functions and operations for 1 term of the parliamentary program. The committee further recommended that the House has agreed that the suspension in respect of all 3 breaches will run concurrently during a term. The House will be informed of the implementation date of the sanction. For the findings made by the committee that Honourable Shivambu failed to comply with the requirements of the provisions for disclosing financial interest, the Assembly has agreed on the penalty of a reduction of 9 days' salary against the member. The House will be informed of the implementation date of the sanction. Honourable members will appreciate that in terms of the rule, there isn't anywhere where it determines when the sanction begins. So I will inform the members when. Thank you. And then we proceed then, and the secretary will now read the 10th order of the day.
Consideration of the report of the Joint Committee on Ethics and Members' Interests on contravention of the Code of Ethical Conduct and Disclosure of Members' Interest. Honourable Bheki Cele, MP, the Minister of Police.
Thank you. I now recognize the Honourable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the report be adopted.
Are there any objections, honourable members? Are there any objections? Honourable Eugene, you have an objection? Thank you, honourable members. There are none. So the report is then adopted. Honourable members, the House has now adopted the committee report concerning Honourable Cele, the Minister of Police. The recommendation of the report agreed to by this House is that the member enter an apology in the House for his conduct towards Mr. Ian Cameron, the Director of Community Safety and Action Society non-profit organization, during a community meeting with the South African Police Service and the communities of Guguletu and Nyanga in the Western Cape on the 5th of July, 2022. I'm informed that Honourable Cele is on official business out of the country. So Honourable Cele will be called upon to enter his apology in due course, honourable members. Agreed to. We then proceed, honourable members, to deal with the 11th order. Secretary will read the 11th order.
Consideration of the report of the Joint Committee on Ethics and Members' Interests or non-disclosures of members' interests for 2022, contravention of the Code of Ethical Conduct and Disclosure of Members' Interests.
That there is agreement that there will be no declarations taken. Once we have adopted the report, I will proceed to issue the reprimand to the member concerned as recommended. I now recognize the Honourable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the report be adopted.
Thank you. Are there any objections, honourable members? None, honorable members. Then the motion is adopted. The report is adopted. Okay, thank you. Honorable member, the House has now adopted the committee report concerning Honorable Kubeka. Yes, Kubeka. Amongst other sanctions, the report recommends a reprimand for the members concerned. You'll recall that on this matter, just for the record context, honorable members, there were 3 honorable members under this. It was Honorable Kubeka, Honorable Kula, and Honorable James. And Honorable James is no more a member of the National Assembly. Honorable Kula as well is no more a member of the National Assembly. So a reprimand in the House will be issued to Honorable Kubeka. Now, the reprimand in this House is a public act aimed at ensuring that discipline is meted out fairly, transparently, and applied consistently. And I will now issue the reprimand to Honorable Kubeka. Honorable Kubeka, I am aware now that you are on the virtual platform. Will you show your face? Honorable member? Honorable Kubeka, are you on the virtual platform? Then honorable member is not on the virtual platform. If honorable member, she hasn't showed her face. Honorable member, I don't want to be misled. The guidance I have received from the officers here before me, the table office, is that the member in this instance, Honorable Kubeka, would have had to stand. And if Honorable Kubeka is on the virtual platform, Honorable Kubeka would have to show her face. So please, I don't want a confusion. Honorable Kubeka, will you show your face on the screen or not?
My screen doesn't want to open, Madam Speaker. My humble apology, but I'm in.
I'm sorry, Honorable Kubeka, my humble apologies. Then you are not in the House today because you were informed that you would be in the House and you'll be required to stand. And I've since received a report that you have indicated that you will be on the screen. And you did not say that you'll be on the virtual platform and that your system will not allow you to show your face. In this instance, you are not in the House, Honorable Member, for the purpose of the reprimand. Honorable Member, please.
My humble apology, Honorable Speaker. I'm still not feeling well. That is why I'm not in the House. But I'm on
Chief Whip of the majority party.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The honorable member was supposed to show her face on the screen. We didn't get anything that says she's not well. So we will make sure that the honorable member appears before this House to do what she's expected to do. We apologize on behalf of the ANC. Thank you.
I thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Honorable Kubeka, the matter is closed right now.
Thank you, but can
Please
I just clarify my
Honorable
camera?
Kubeka, Honorable Kubeka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You are not in this session right now, please. Thank you very much, Honorable Kubeka. The Honorable Chief Whip has clarified the position. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, we then proceed to the 12th order. The secretary will read the 12th order of the day.
Debate on 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children. The role of men in combating gender-based violence and femicide.
Honorable member, I now invite the Honorable the Deputy Minister of Justice and Correctional Services responsible for justice and constitutional development to address us.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker and honorable members. The 16 Days of Activism for No Violence Against Women and Children campaign is a United Nations campaign which takes place annually from the 25th of November, which is the International Day of No Violence Against Women, until the 10th of December, which is International Human Rights Day. Other commemorative days, such as World AIDS Day and the International Day for Persons with Disabilities, also fall within this period. So it's an international United Nations campaign and not something that is just taking place in South Africa. The 16 Days campaign forms part of government's comprehensive 365 days of activism for no violence against women and children. High levels of gender-based violence, sexual violence, and domestic violence are tearing families and communities apart. And very often the crimes are perpetrated by people close to or known to the victim, like a family member, a friend, a teacher, or a neighbor. Who are committing most of these crimes against women and children? Men are. And that is why it is important that we talk to men and boys. I think the president expressed it best when he said, and I quote, "It's a problem of men. Our young men and boys are daily exposed to patriarchal attitudes and practices and are often encouraged to prove their masculinity through domination and violence." Earlier this month, on International Men's Day, the Takuwani Rime Program of Action for 2023 to 2025 was launched in Limpopo. This program encourages men to take a position to address the many gender-related issues plaguing our society. The program acknowledges that eliminating gender-based violence will require rejecting all forms of violence. Men need to discuss and learn about their role in combating gender-based violence and femicide. We need to talk to men and boys because men and boys have been the dominant perpetrators of gender-based violence and femicide. We as men are the problem, and therefore we have to be part of the solution. Every woman in our community is somebody's mother, somebody's daughter, or somebody's sister. None of us would be here today if it wasn't for women. Patriarchal value systems are still prevalent in South African families and communities. Some men believe that male dominance and male entitlement is the norm. This continues to manifest in different forms of gender-based violence. For example, some men believe they have a right to a woman's body, that they have a right to treat a woman as an object, that their wife or girlfriend belongs to them and they can do and is their possession, and that they can do with them as they like. That a woman really means yes when she says no, or that domestic violence is a private matter that happens behind closed doors. These are the attitudes that we must change. There have been a number of legislative interventions to prevent and combat gender-based violence and femicide and domestic violence. We have the 3 new gender-based violence amendment acts, which have drastically changed the architecture of the legal framework in responding to gender-based violence, sexual offences, and femicide. We need to ensure the multi-sectoral implementation of these laws countrywide, and most importantly, to create a court system that is compliant. This month also marks a historic milestone with the passing of the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Bill by the National Assembly. The establishment of the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide is an urgent and a critical task. This includes the development of the comprehensive national gender-based violence and femicide prevention and the integrated femicide strategic frameworks, which signal a holistic approach to turning the gender-based violence tide. On the issue of domestic violence protection orders, there are men who point out that men can also be victims of domestic violence. This is true, but the reality is that of the total number of domestic violence protection orders granted in the last financial year, that's 2022-23, some 3/4 of the victims were women and 1/4 were men. When it comes to the perpetrators, roughly 3/4 of the perpetrators were men and 1/4 were women. The Domestic Violence Amendment Act, or the Domestic Violence Act as amended, is not anti-men. It's gender neutral in its application. But it is a fact that the overwhelming majority of persons who need the protection offered by the bill are women. Equally important is the safety of children, and there have been significant improvements with these 3 GBV acts to further protect children, such as introducing the, and I quote, exposing of a child to domestic violence, the close quotes, as an additional act of domestic violence, and stating that a child may apply for a protection order whether assisted or not. Any person may apply for a protection order on behalf of such a child, and legal aid services may be offered in appropriate cases to the complainant, the respondent, or the child when applying for such a protection order. Furthermore, bystanderism in domestic violence perpetrated against a child is prohibited. By bystanderism, it would be just watching, standing by as a bystander. So that is prohibited, and failure to report domestic violence against a child is a crime. Intermediary services are available to children when testifying in both civil and criminal proceedings, and there will be no police bail in cases of rape or compelled rape involving, amongst others, a child victim, a victim with a disability, or a victim who is or was in a domestic relationship with the accused person. I want to highlight that it will take a collective effort from all of us, whether it be government, the public and private sectors, civil society, traditional leaders, religious leaders, communities, business and individuals to prevent and combat gender-based violence. It is also important that the 16 Days campaign is not viewed as a standalone event. It's not just 16 days. It's part of a 365 days of activism campaign, which aims to mobilize members of society, especially men, to join hands with government in the fight to curb violence against women and children. And I want to include all men, those who are fathers, brothers, uncles, neighbors, community leaders, teachers, religious leaders, employers. Each one of us has a responsibility towards eradicating gender-based violence and femicide. The objectives of the 16-day campaign are to ensure that every one of us are active participants in the fight to eradicate violence against women and children. We need to ensure mass mobilization of all communities to promote collective responsibility to fight the scourge of violence. And as a country, we have a history of violence. The history of violence can be seen in the way many people still seem to see violence as a way of resolving conflict, which only then further perpetrates the cycle of violence from one generation to the next. Many children grow up in abusive homes and will one day become abusive partners or abusive husbands because they've grown up in households where violence has been normalized. We need to acknowledge that violence against women and children is a societal problem, and therefore the solution lies with all of us. Another factor we should also be open and frank about in discussing is the impact of alcohol and substance abuse on incidents of gender-based violence and femicide. Honourable Speaker, it is also crucial that women are economically empowered. There's a link between economic insecurity and gender-based violence, as women who financially have to rely on their partners are at greater risk of gender-based violence. We often see this when women withdraw domestic violence or charges against men because the man is the breadwinner and threatens to withhold money or food from the woman or the children unless she withdraws the charges. Women who are affected by gender-based violence must be economically empowered so that it makes it easier for them to get out of an abusive relationship. There are a number of existing initiatives which aim to prevent and combat gender-based violence and provide support to GBV survivors. The victims of sexual offences courts are able to access the specialized sexual offences courts without fear or prejudice. Our sexual offences courts assist in eliminating the secondary victimization and improving support services and creating a victim-centric environment. The National Prosecuting Authority is continuing with the expansion of its Cele care centre footprint, and an increased number of TCC sites from 55 to 62 operational sites in the last 2 years, as well as maintaining sexual offence conviction rates with a current conviction rate of 76%. With regard to the National Register for Sexual Offenders, any person who comes into contact with vulnerable persons in any way, manner, or form must be vetted against the register so the vulnerable persons are protected against convicted sex offenders. We're making progress with the issuing of clearance certificates. As an example, the percentage of certificates issued within 10 days from the date of receipt of the application was 95% in the month of August, achieved against an annual target of 70%. Honourable members, these are but some of the many interventions and initiatives government has and is continuing to put in place to combat and prevent gender-based violence and femicide in all its forms. But it will take a collective effort if we are to succeed, with every single person in our country having to do their part to stop the scourge of gender-based violence. I want to urge everyone who needs assistance to call the GBV emergency number on 0800 428 428. And that number is working. I tried it yesterday. It was answered pretty quickly. Or send a please call me to *120 *7867# or SMS the word help to 31531. Help is available. This is not something that we should be party politicizing. This is a crisis for the country that we all need to get involved collectively in overcoming. Finally, Speaker, I want to close with just a few selected lines from a poem from Maya Angelou, who herself was a survivor of gender-based violence, and where she speaks of resilience and overcoming hardship. And it reads, "Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air I rise. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise, I rise, I rise." Thank you.
I thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. The next speaker on my list is Honourable N.K. Sharif.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me start by welcoming the debate for 16 days of activism today. The role of men combating gender-based violence and femicide is where it starts and ultimately where it ends. The role of men in combating GBVF determines how many women keep dying, keep being violated, keep being abused at the hands of violent men. As broad of a topic this is, it's really a simple thing. The violence perpetrated towards women by men must stop. It is men who need to combat GBVF because it is men who perpetrate violence against women. I will say upfront that there are men that work hard to combat GBVF, but we need more. I am reminded by the famous meditation from French philosopher René Descartes, "I think, therefore I am." We all have the capacity to determine our own attainability of knowledge. The need to learn, unlearn, and relearn is a responsibility we all have. This is the only way we can change society and make South Africa a better country. The role men have to play is literally all of it. GBVF is not an issue women should bear the responsibility of fixing, yet here we are. It is women who are at the forefront of this fight, while men often take a supportive role. This is so absurd if you think about it. If men stopped the violence, we would not live in a country with one of the highest GBVF rates in the world. In the second quarter alone, we have seen over 10,000 rapes being reported, over 1,500 sexual assaults, over 200 domestic violence murder charges, and over 7,000 domestic violence cases. And this is only what has been reported. These are not just stats. These are the lives of women. These are human beings. The truth is, women are not safe in this country because we are not seen as equal autonomous beings. GBVF happens to all types of women, by all types of men. None of us are immune. The struggle of women more often than not lay at the hands of violent men, and men have the responsibility to bear this burden. There must be a level of responsibility to work on the emotional and mental well-being of men, to get healing from the trauma so many men go through. The patriarchy affects men just as much as women, and we must speak out about it more. It is men and women that must raise their families without gender stereotypes and to actively and consciously fight the patriarchy. As much as this requires a whole of society approach, the culture you instill in your children is dependent on how they are raised at home. We must start opening spaces which men fully occupy, especially in government and the private sector, to see women as equal. Men in this country must hold each other accountable. Again, as women, it should not fall upon us to keep you accountable. It is important to be aware of how people speak and joke around rape and the role of women. Calling out misogynist jokes and comments some men make around braais in the barbershops or with friends is an example of how you can hold each other accountable. If not, this is perpetuating violence and saying that this sort of behavior is acceptable. It is not acceptable. It is men that must call out other men for their violence, no matter what form it takes. The more men that stand up to other men against violence towards women, the better. Now, please do not misunderstand me. I am not here asking for allyship. I am asking for common decency. As women, we should not need to fight just for the right to exist. I want to also acknowledge those men that do stand up for GBVF and who continue to unlearn the devastating and dangerous effects of the patriarchy and misogyny. It is these men that have worked and continue to work tirelessly to change the social fabric along with women. It is the fathers that teach their families that we cannot progress without men and women working together as equals. It is the leaders in society that respect women's places and actually open up spaces without conflict for the progress of women and society as a whole. It is husbands and boyfriends that treat women with love and kindness and make them feel safe. It is organizations like Langa for Men and Not in My Name that are some of the male-led organizations that understand the role of men goes beyond a supporting role, but must take full responsibility in the fight against GBVF. We need more of you. Men must inspire the next generation of men to take up the mantle and work towards a more fair and equal society. We cannot combat GBVF if we do not start challenging the factors such as misogyny, sexism, patriarchy, gender stereotypes, and lack of emotional and mental well-being and support for men. This must be done within our homes, within our workspaces, within schools, and within all spaces you as the individual occupies. This, honorable members, is our shared responsibility, and we owe it to the next generation to do so. I thank you.
I thank you, honorable member. I thank you, honorable member. Our next speaker is honorable member from the EFF. I don't have a name here. Honorable member from the EFF.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Makaula. Proceed.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. If sikhuluma ngokuhlukunyezwa kwabantu besifazane, sikhuluma ngento enzima, engathi thina sesiyithatha siyenza ijoke. Uyabona lento ka 16 days iyalimaza and ibuhlungu. Ngoba mawuthi uyabheka lana abantu besifazana abahlukumezeki ngoba ku November kuphela. Bayazi kwi-portfolio committee sikhala izinyembezi daily. Indlela abantu bakithi besifazana abahlukunyezwa ngawo behlukunyezwa, abantu abathandana nabo behlukunyezwa, abantu okufanele babavikela okuze kuvele even nabafundisi uqobo. Lento le egcina isibangela isibibithwane sokuthi thina siyahlala kule portfolio yelokhuzana ekhuluma ngokuhlunyezwa kwabantu besifazane. Kodwa ekugcineni asiboni bevikelekile. Engakhuluma ngakho nje kunezinto la esihlezi sikhuluma ngazo daily. Ukuthi umnyango kagovernment ngabe uyazibheka ukuthi zona zinawo yini umthelela kulezi inkinga esikhala ngazo sokuhlukunyezwa kwabantu besifazane. Ngakhala la ngendlela yokuthi ke kubhekelelwe lezi zinyanga ama-traditional leaders lawa alapha abantu ngoba most of them ama-cases nawo uthola ukuthi intombazana noma ingane ibulewe kodwa yathathelwa izicubu zomzimba wawo ngenxa yani yalento yokuthi yenkoleloze yokuthi bazokwazi ukuceba. Okwesibili, amathaveni lawa agcwele ezindaweni zabantu abamnyama engingazi ukuthi ugovernment mayikhipha ama-license alamathaveni uyacabanga kuqala noma yini azowafaka phakathi kwemizi yabantu bakithi ngangosi nje ungena ngisho emakhaya. Ama-drugs akhona laphayana. And mangabe kuvulwa amacala wonke lawa agcina yobhadla ezinkantolo. UMinister of Justice naye unesandla kulezi zinto ngoba kunama-case amaningi othola ukuthi awe-rape ahlezi lapha nawo ukubulawa kwabantu ahlezi lapha emakhoti angakwazi ukuthi egcine ethethiwe kugwetshwa abantu. Uthola ukuthi omunye umuntu uyangena manje kusasa icala lakhe liyapostpona kuthathwa lento kuphela okuthiwa amabheli. Okunye okuvangela yalento esikhala ngazo indlela yamaphoyisa asebenza ngayo. Amaphoyisa ala eSouth Africa akanalo uzwelo nomuntu wesifazane. Umuntu wesifazane usahlukumezeke ngangokuthi noma engaya e-police station eyobika ethi umuntu athandana naye uyamhlukumeza uthi buyela back uhambe niyoxoxisana. And mangabe kufanele aboshwe lo muntu akaboshwe. Ezinye zezinto okufuna ilungiswe la phezulu government before ziye phansi. Ezinye izinto chairperson eziyinkinga kakhulu. Nalento yokuthuthukisa kwabantu besifazane bafundiswe ukuzimela bengalokhu bencike kubantu besilisa abazogcina kugcineni bababulale ngenxa yokuthi bafuna ukuthi babathengele ukudla abakwazi babondlelele izingane. Lana siyakhuluma daily ukuthi asibabone phela abantu besifazane nabo bethuthukiswa bekwazi ukuzimela bafundiswe nangokuthi ama-skills balime bafunde ukuzimela kuze isikhathi esiningi ayithi mayimbona indoda ibona lo muntu akanendaba nami. And nokuhamba-ke kuyiwe emakhaya kube nama-awareness ngoba lama 16 days activities enikhuluma ngawo izinto ozizwa nje ku-radio mhlawumbe egcine kwamadolobheni endaweni ethize. Emakhaya baye bantu phansi bawulalela iy'nkinga zabo babafundise ngale ndaba ye-16 days nanendlela yokuthi ama-right abathini. Khona umuntu nje emakhaya uthola ukuthi ubekezela nje ukugqilazwa indoda yamshaya mayithi ubika kubo kuthiwa bekezela mayithi ubika la igcekeni emndenini kuthiwa bekezela. Ngani? Ayikho into emsizayo nemlekelelayo. Ubaba wengane ubhizi la ekhaya urepa ingane yakhe kodwa lana akufuneki ukuthi ayikhulume. Uthola ukuthi umakhelwane urepa ingane la bathi bona no funeka wena uzohlawula. Ziningi izinkinga okufanele silwe nalezi zinto ngoba ekugcineni so lo sixoxa siwesa isikhathi ngento engayiphambili. Amathaveni yabona nje mangabe siya lana mhlambe uyala kuma university uthola inkinga uphuma amehlo kuphethwe ikhanda amehlo ebovu bekutshela ukuthi siyareshwa even lana kuma rest la sihlala khona asikwazi ukukhululeka emsebenzini bayareshwa abantu besifazane bayahlukumezela bayizisulu and nalena ke ngishoyo
Siyabonga
ukuyigcizelela
mama uKhawula.
Ngiyabonga
Siyabonga
nami.
mama uKhawula. Siyabonga
Ngiyabonga.
kakhulu.
Okay Manasi.
The next speaker on the list, honorable member, is Honorable Inkosi M.E. Buthelezi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. The scourge of violence against women and children persists as a stain in our society, demanding urgent and sustained attention. The latest statistics indicate that over 14,000 female were victims of assault with the intent of causing grievous bodily harm incidents. This shows us that our campaign against gender-based violence and femicide must have a 365 days focus, not just during the 16 days. However, the 16 days of activism serves as a strong reminder that this issue requires a collective response from all members of the society. It's imperative, Honourable Speaker, to acknowledge that gender-based violence is not merely a women's issue. It's a societal issue that demands the active involvement of men. Therefore, men must be in the forefront of dismantling destructive behavior. Our debate today, Speaker, calls for a paradigm shift, urging men to be active allies in the fight against gender-based violence. Beyond denouncing violence, men must actively challenge harmful stereotypes, fostering healthy masculinity and contribute to creating a culture of respect and equality. Honourable Speaker, therefore we must invest in the comprehensive programs that teaches consent, empathy, and mutual respect from a young age. In the contemporary landscape, there is an urgent and compelling need for a return to fundamental values, particularly concerning the education of young men in appreciating cultural values and norms that aim to protect women. The societal fabric is woven with a diverse array of beliefs, traditions, and customs, many of which have historically been designed to foster respect, equality, and well-being of all individuals. Unfortunately, in the recent times, Honourable Speaker, there has been an erosion of these values, leading to an alarming increase in instances of violence, harassment, and discrimination against women. By instilling these values early on, we can cultivate a generation of men who reject violence and understand the importance of fostering a safe and supportive environment. Silence in the face of abuse, Speaker, perpetuates a culture of violence. Men who witness or suspect abusive behavior must actively intervene, support survivors, and challenge the behavior of their peers. In the political sphere, we advocate for legislative measures that reinforce the severity of gender-based violence and ensuring that perpetrators face the stringent consequences for their action. Simultaneously, we must build a support system for survivors, providing them with accessible avenues to seek justice and healing. Honourable Speaker, let us unite and recognize that fighting against gender-based violence demands a collective commitment from all of us as South Africans. Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker.
I thank you, Honorable Buthelezi. The next speaker on my list is Honorable F.J. Mulder. Honorable F.J. Mulder.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. Ending violence in our communities is going to involve all of us. And it's critical that men and people of all genders, race, are active in participants of promoters of change to the current status quo. It's also critical to combat not only the individual instances of violence, but also the systemic forms of violence. Men, of course, also experience many forms of violence, from sexual assault to racism to homophobia, classism, and poverty. Forms of violence intersect, compound, and are layered. It is important to isolate gender-based violence away from racism, homophobia, classism, poverty, and others. In order to create a meaningful movement to end sexualized violence, we must oppose all forms of violence. House Chair, men should take responsibility for how much power we have, how much space we take up, and our actions and behavior. We should question our complicity within the systems of violence. Do we contribute to or oppose violence with our actions, words, or silence? We often experience in this very august house a culture of instigation, division, violence, racism, and insults, which then send a signal to the public at large that this type of behavior is the norm in South Africa. House Chair, violence against women and children has a multidimensional effect on the overall health of the economy, both in short term and the long term. In short term, women from abusive homes are likely to work fewer hours and be less productive when they do work. In the long run, high levels of domestic violence can decrease the number of women in the workforce, minimizing women's acquisition of skills and education, and result in less public investment overall as a mere public resources channeled to health and judicial services. House Chair, domestic violence could cost a given economy between 1% and 2% of a gross domestic product, and the possible reverse casualty of causality can be worse. Violence against women and children knows no boundaries or geography or culture, but those living in poverty faces a higher abuse or a level of abuse, of course. Some believe that violence toward women and children is not their business, but House Chair, South Africa is in a collision course. South African men and women should reflect and reconsider their views on violence. We should set an example in this house by not only debating, but have sensible debates about the future and refrain from more blame shifting, denial, and senseless insults. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Mulder. My next speaker here is Honourable M.E. Sukars.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, there is no woman on earth that does not deserve outrage at violence inflicted upon her. October was the day about which outrage was selective. It was a day of silence when the most horrific manner imaginable. Yet the world remained silent. South Africa knows gender-based violence in its cruelest forms, but this government remained stoic. There were chilling accounts from survivors and first responders who witnessed Hamas's massacre of 1,200 Israelis, painting a horrifying picture of systemic sexual assaults perpetrated against women and girls of all ages. Is the rape of a Black woman, a white woman, a Jewish woman, an Iranian more horrific based on how we relate? Do we feel it more if it is our own skin and religion? The lack of explicit and more widespread condemnation of the Hamas atrocities on women and children is deeply concerning. And the international Me Too movement has completely failed to mention Hamas atrocities on the Israeli women victims. Our very own Sia Kolisi says, and I quote, "People think of that being a problem only for a certain section of society, but it is not. It doesn't matter whether you are male or female, Black or white, rich or poor. If you are a human being, then this affects you," close quote. He stressed we must call for improved laws and services to end violence against women and girls for good. The ACDP fully supports men being people of strength with integrity and kindness, where women and children can look up to husbands, fathers, and men in general as people they can trust, not to harm them. But this does not happen by wishing. Each man has a mission to change. Any attempted intervention in relation to GBV and F must acknowledge the public health crisis of pornography. There are infamous court cases in our country that show the violation of women and children as a result of men watching porn. This scourge and addiction must be addressed and gain the stigma that it deserves. Men must be active in the effort to stop this violence. The 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence campaign works to call for the elimination of all forms of GBV. Studies across 24 of 27 countries reveal that children's exposure to violence and trauma is linked to men's use of violence against their intimate partners. It is surely an unusual society that does not protect its women. Men's contribution starts with their own behavior and the respectful reference to women, particularly in conversation with other men. And by raising their sons to honor their mothers, sisters, and other women, no matter what race, religion, or history, they will grow into men
Thank you,
who are
Honourable
horrified
Sukas.
at such violence and break the pernicious cycle.
Honourable Sukas.
GBV, I thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on the list is Honourable NLS Kwangwa.
Phenyimeni uzothi Speaker inkosi ukhwangwa yiyo nami. Honourable Speaker, the unacceptably high levels of gender-based violence and femicide taking place in our country are sins that we had never imagined. After conquering the trying times of human rights violations under apartheid, little did we know that 29 years into our democracy would be grappling with these shameful moments of men violating women almost on a daily basis, raping them, cases of attempted murder, children and women being killed. Rape and sexual violence have become hyper-endemic in South Africa, which is a blight on our national conscience and a betrayal of the constitutional order for which so many fought and for which so many of our people were willing to sacrifice their lives. We are of the view that men should play a critical role in curbing GBV, and the UDM calls on the Department of Youth, Women and Persons with Disability, Social Development, SAPS, and other relevant stakeholders to collaborate in strengthening educative programs aimed at educating men in particular about GBV. Men, we believe that men should be at the forefront and must call each other out to create safe communities, as ending violence against women and children should be a collective responsibility that we work towards on a daily basis. It is significant that men and boys are active participants and promoters of change to get rid of the current status quo. And most importantly, men should be positive role models in their communities to young men and boys in order to teach them about how to become healthy role models and move away from masculinity. There are good pieces of legislation which we've adopted as this National Assembly in the fight against gender-based violence. However, we need to work closely with these entities which are responsible for their implementation to ensure that there is improvement and to ensure that our people's lives are indeed saved and that we're able to build safer communities working together. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Honourable Nkosi Kwangwa.
Kamangu, Speaker.
The next speaker on the list will be the Honourable Member from the ATM. Honourable Member from the ATM. Okay, it seems they are not on the virtual platform for now. Shall we then proceed to recognize the Honourable B.N. Heron?
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, violence against women and femicide continues to plague our country. Between July and September, 881 women were murdered in this country. And during the same period, 1,514 attempted murders of women victims occurred in the country. We have to break this cycle. And as we go into December, a time of festivities, we must remember these figures and realize that 2024 must be better and different. For this to change, we need to reform, action, education, and a cultural shift. Just yesterday, 3 women security officers were sexually assaulted and raped after heavily armed criminals entered the Department of Transport in Merebank. These acts of violence and cruelty are a reflection of the society that continues to stand by while our sisters are treated as objects. A year and some months on from the barbaric mass rape that occurred in Krugersdorp by supposed Zama-Zamas, and despite hurried arrests, the police have nothing to show for it and no DNA-based leads. And then there's Anthea Houston, who was assaulted while peacefully protesting during one of South Africa's largest running events in Cape Town in broad daylight in front of thousands of people. These tragic events reflect the awful truth
Thank
of
you,
current culture.
Honorable Heron. Sorry, your time is up. Honorable Heron. Thank you. The next speaker on the list will be the Honorable A.S. Hlongo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, before I begin, let me say that it's been 4 years since Amahle Tabete went missing. Honorable Chairperson or Honorable Speaker, just 3 days ago, it was a birthday. I want to take this opportunity to not to wish her a happy birthday, but to plead with the police and Minister Cele to put more effort in the search of little Amahle. At this point, Honorable Speaker, our prayers are with the mother of Amahle and the family in these difficult times. Honorable Speaker, sorry. Bible, what's wrong?
Okay.
Patriarchy and gender power relations manifest has created male dominance in various facets in life. Addressing the underlying factors is critical as the social and economic position of women requires various interventions. The persistent realities underscores the association between authority in political, economic, and social spheres and masculinity. Traditional attributes linked to being a boy or a man is associated and interconnected with higher economic rewards and political influence compared to those with girls and women. Masculinity and feminine qualities continues to shape the behavior of men or the behavior of males and females and their gender-related roles. Despite increasing presence of women in leadership roles, the perception persists that leadership is inherently masculine, leading to societal stigmatization for women to deviate from traditional gender norms. Men who engage in low-status domestic work may face ridicule and excessive praise, highlighting the enduring gender biases of societal perceptions and expectations. Honorable members, the gender division of labor, which associates low-status domestic work with femininity and perceives high-status public leadership as masculine, highlights how men benefit from their association with masculine privileges. This perpetuates inequality as masculinities receive higher social status, economic rewards, and political power in many societies, maintaining a state of imbalance. Deeply ingrained stereotypes and power imbalances contribute to an environment where violence against women is either tolerated nor normalized. Honorable House members or Honorable Chairperson, by fostering respect, understanding, and equality in relationships, we can challenge and dismantle the structures that perpetuate harmful behaviors. Initiatives aimed at promoting open communication, consent education, and mutual support within relationships are essential components of combating gender-based violence and femicide. Additionally, raising awareness about the detrimental consequences of toxic behavior and encouraging positive masculinity can contribute to a cultural shift that reflects violence and promotes a society where all individuals, regardless of gender, can live free from fear and harm. Honorable members, the media and popular culture plays a significant role in perpetuating harmful stereotypes, influencing societal attitudes and behaviors regarding gender roles. Narratives often portrayed in the media contribute to reinforcing toxic masculinity, exacerbating gender-based violence. To encounter this, there is a pressing need for popular culture to oppose gender-based violence actively by promoting narratives that challenge harmful stereotypes, showcase healthy relationships, and amplify voices advocating for gender-based violence. Equally, honorable members, important is the ongoing dialogues within the family, communities, and various social platforms or partners is paramount for fostering a collective commitment to combat gender-based violence and promote healthy relationships. Sustainable change begins within an open, continuous conversation that encourages community members to share perspective, challenge ingrained beliefs, and collectively work together towards dismantling harmful norms. Ongoing dialogue serves as an educational platform, providing communities with deeper understanding of the root causes of gender-based violence and the significance of cultivating respectful relationships. Regular discussions empower communities to address concerns, share resources, and develop strategies to create environments that reject violence and discrimination. This continuous engagement is instrumental in fostering a sense of shared responsibility, motivating individuals to actively contribute to the transformation of societal attitudes and behaviors. We need to focus on a boy child and how a boy child is raised. We should also discuss how we raise the girl child. This is critical for them to face society with an orientation which advances gender equality. Honorable Speaker, advocating for policies that address the root causes of gender-based violence, promote equality, is crucial for establishing a comprehensive framework to combat gender-based violence, which the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide seeks to address. This includes educational reforms integrating gender-sensitive curricula, workplace policies preventing discrimination, and legal reforms ensuring consequences for the perpetrators. Initiatives supporting economic empowerment, such as equal pay and women entrepreneurship support, address disparities contributing to vulnerability. Ultimately, ending gender-based violence requires collective efforts from individuals, communities, government, and institutions. As allies, men as allies and advocates play a vital role creating a world where gender-based violence is not tolerated and all individuals can live free from fear and harm. Sengvala somlomo ngifuna ukusho ukuthi inhlangano yakhongolose itimisele ekulweni ngekuhlukunyetwa ngekwebulili futhi itimisele kwakha sive lesiphephile lapho wonke umuntu avikelekile khona. Ngekubambisana sonke sibomake nabobabe sidayilwa lenkinga lesibukene nayo. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you very much, Honorable Songo. Honorable Songo, thank you. The next speaker on my list is Honorable A.M. Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me start off by saying, let's talk about the ACDP and the comments that were made, Chairperson. First of all, let me start off by saying she's absolutely correct. There is no international organizations raising concerns about the women and children, the Jewish women and children that were massacred by Hamas, because they were not massacred by Hamas. That is why they can't report on it. More and more Jewish people that were even held hostage are coming out and telling you how well they were treated by Hamas. To such an extent, one particular incident, the woman says, well, I carried my child. The other one carried a child on his back. The other one says how they gave them food, water, how well they treated them. So yes, nobody can say Hamas has ill-treated them because there's no facts. Hamas treated them very well. On the contrary, if you look at what the latest report says, it's the Israeli Defense Force that opened fire that led to the killing of so many of its own people. Now, I know the DA, you say it's absurd. You are correct, it's absurd. And I think the ACDP is also correct. Because you talk about women and children, but right in full view of you, women and children are being abused and massacred. Mothers can't give birth because there's no anesthetic. Okay, they are long overdue. Is it all because of this? Is this what it is all about? Is this what it is all about? You've sold your principles and your souls. Now, Chairperson, one of the root causes of gender-based violence is alcohol. And there is 75 scriptures that warn you about taking alcohol. But Where did it all start? Particularly, let's look at the Western Cape and why there's such a high levels of alcohol abuse. Because this Western Cape government, this apartheid government, used to pay these people, which we call the DOP system, chairperson, used to pay them with alcohol, not with money, which has resulted in alcohol fetal syndrome. And that is why it's moving from generation to generation. But we are not addressing the socio-economic conditions under which our people are living. That is why you would find with the latest crime statistics, the Western Cape, gender-based violence is a serious problem. Teenage pregnancy is a serious problem. I see many people just attacking men like the men gave birth to women. Women must also take responsibility. We must take equal responsibility to create a better society. So let's not come here and grandstand and complain about it. Let's do something positive. If you look at the conditions under which our people live in the Western Cape, that is why the poorest of the poor in the Western Cape live the way they are. And that is why there's such high levels of gender-based violence, teenage pregnancy, HIV and AIDS. The NFP supports any initiative to deal with the high levels of gender-based violence. And I hope that you'll get more shekels in the future.
Thank you. The next speaker on my list is Honourable Luwate.
Chairperson Swartya.
Honourable Luwate.
Chairperson Swartya.
Yes.
I had my hand up and I know it wasn't recognized.
I'm
But
sorry.
I just wanted to
I'm sorry.
raise a point of order
Yes.
that Sheikh Iman
Yes.
referred to our member as a she. And I think that is highly disrespectful, but I appreciate that he's left the podium already. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Honourable Swart. Shall we then proceed, honourable members? Honourable Luwate, are you on the?
Yes,
platform?
Madam Speaker.
Yes, you may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Human civilization is still stuck in the past. It is indeed very depressing and hard to comprehend why the world over, the 25th of November each year, has to kickstart 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. This is an annual international campaign. Our South African democracy is tarnished by the fact that very little progress has been made in respect of elimination of violence against women and children. Women are unable to enjoy their human rights accorded to them by our own constitution because the men in our country lack the upbringing that should have been their birthright. The campaign has started by activists and at the inauguration of Women's Global Leadership Institute in 1991. 30 years have gone by and we still are running on the same spot. In our townships, taverns are more prevalent than any other center for recreation and social togetherness. Life in our townships, as Steve Biko had pointed out, remain a hell. The transformation of the townships remains stalled and violence remains a never-ending issue. While the situation in most of our townships remain one where alcohol is abused to dull the pain of existence, violence will continue and women will suffer more than men. Our government has to show an interest in walking the talk by investing in gender-based violence prevention in hotspot areas. Without funding and active policy execution, we will be running on the same spot and countless women will have suffered the trauma of violence at the hands of their male counterparts. We need demonstrable action on the part of government. Society needs to know and to see that this government means business in respect of tackling gender-based violence. By showcasing sustained advocacy efforts on the part of civil society, activists, and every sphere of government, those who resort to violence will get to understand how abhorrent their actions are to their friends, families, and society at large. Let us use and understand outreach programs in schools, colleges, and universities. Let us engage young people and faith-based organizations, and let us show that gender-based violence is despicable and those who resort to it are the very worst amongst us. After 30 years of pleading and persuading, Real action must now materialize to honor and protect the women of our nations. I thank you.
I thank you, Honorable Luate. My next speaker is Honorable Nyiko.
No, Honorable Speaker, I'm not debating.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable. How can you not debate on 16 days of activism?
It's because I've been debating it for the past 4 years and there's nothing changing. We must behave as men only. We've been talking
Okay.
every day in this parliament.
Okay, then. Thank you, Honorable Nyiko. Honorable Member, Honorable Hendricks. Honorable Hendricks. You're not on the platform. We proceed. Honorable A.M. Weber.
Speaker, gender-based violence is a vile disease that plagues our country. It is the single greatest limitation of a woman's right to self-determination and dignity. It happens daily, every hour, every minute. Yet, where is the outcry for these human rights violations? Instead, we turn our backs on women and children, placing the responsibility on them to protect themselves from the violation of their own rights. Awareness campaigns focus on how women should protect themselves, how women must take self-defense, and how women should plan their daily routines around gender-based violence, but nothing on how to deal with the perpetrators or the root cause. We remain silent on the role of men in combating this issue. We need a whole of society approach. Only then can we say that we have started to combat gender-based violence. While we celebrate 16 days of activism against violence against women and children, what about the other 349 days of no activism against gender-based violence? In fact, the attacks and violence on women and children have increased and have become more brutal, with increased brutality having almost becoming the norm. Gender-based violence is a daily occurrence at home, work, and socially. What makes it even worse is that women have given up on reporting these violations. Less than 40% of women who experience violence actually report it. Let me make this very clear. Men, you do not have the right to beat up or rape your wife, girlfriend, or any other woman. That is a gross violation of their human rights. The strangest thing is that women are still raised to believe that a knight in shining armor will come and save her, be her hero, fall in love, and live forever happy. While nothing can be further from the truth. Today, there are hardly any heroes, and men prefer to turn their heads and look the other way when a damsel is in distress. How does a mother prepare or tell the following stories of this reality to her young baby girl about a man's love? The loving husband who out of anger poured petrol over his wife's body and set her alight. The loving but jealous boyfriend who burnt men's names with a soldering iron over his girlfriend's body. 5-year-old girls disappearing from a family celebration, only to be found a week later mutilated, raped, and beaten. What happened to the right to life, equality, justice, freedom, safety, security, and human dignity enshrined so greatly in our Constitution when men act as if they have the right to violate every single one of them? Our laws and policies to combat gender-based violence continue to be only a paper exercise. No enforcement, no execution. Not only are our laws failing us, but within the ranks of the people tasked with combating gender-based violence, we find perpetrators. We see corruption, where bribes are paid by rapists to police officers for dockets to disappear. Where the ANC government reinstated a PEC member in Mpumalanga after he allegedly raped his twin 8-year-old daughters. Is there a political will from those in power to root out these heinous crimes? Absolutely not. The South African focus of this year's campaign is accelerating actions to end gender-based violence and femicide. The question is, what actions? Were laws passed to ensure that there are anger management classes for men with anger issues? Have school curriculums been adapted to teach children how to treat women with respect and dignity? What about teaching men to be good role models and fathers? Are socioeconomic conditions that contribute to gender-based violence being addressed? There is no dialogue on how to support men and deal with anger, depression, feelings of incompetence, violence, and what is the role of a father and husband. What about addressing the generational cycles of abuse that man may carry? What about identifying violent behavior at school and addressing it? We need to open up a dialogue where we include men in the response to combating gender-based violence. Men, you cannot be bystanders anymore. You have to actively be part of the solution by recognizing your own rights, understanding the rights of others, acting against discrimination, inequality, and injustice, developing and implementing programs that focus on individuals who commit family and sexual violence, linking families to relevant social services, develop and implementing fatherhood programs with NGOs and community centers that provide family and children services and initiatives. Speaking up when you hear violent and oppressive comments, identifying violence and harassment in your schools or workplace and learn to oppose it, becoming a positive role model. In order to combat gender-based violence, a whole of society approach is required, which includes government, law enforcement agencies, communities, civil society, political parties, and men. Women are not your enemies. They are not your possessions or slaves. They can be your best friend for life if you treat her with dignity. We need you to stand up, to uproot this atrocity of a crime and cure the disease. This is a call to arms to the men of South Africa. The power to combat gender-based violence lies in your hands. It is your opportunity to move from perpetrator to protector. Make the right choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Weber. Thank you. My next speaker and the last, of course, is Honorable Z Ngomo.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. But before I can enter into my speech, Honorable Speaker, I just want to say this to Makaule. You spoke very well, leadership, we really appreciate. But would have loved to hear the views of the EFF in terms of their role in combating the issues of gender-based violence. It was going to be nice to also hear that part within your own discussion within the party. What is your views in terms of that?
Point of order, Chair. Special point of correction. No point of correction.
Honorable.
Yes.
No,
Makaula.
Honorable Makaula.
Makaula.
Okay. Thank you. You may proceed then, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Honorable Makaula. Honorable Sheikh Imam, the women in this country or in the world, they continue to bear the brand or continue to become the victims of gender-based violence. And hence, in terms of women, there has been strides. Women have demonstrated, but the debate seeks to address, to say that it is not only the issue of women, but we also need men to also assist. What?
Continue, Honorable Member.
No, I was just saying to Honorable Sheikh that women bear the brand and women continue to be victimized. Hence, in most cases, you'll find women, they're the ones in the forefront of fighting against the gender-based violence and femicide. But in this debate, it says we want to understand the role of men because men continues to be the one that commits the acts of gender-based violence. And to the PAC comrade that says there's got no input, comrade, Honorable Member, sorry, it is very disappointing. This is a very sensitive issue because gender-based violence continues to manifest itself within our communities. And as a political party, you must have a view on this issue.
Order, Honorable Speaker. Order.
Nyiko, point of order. What is your point of order?
No, she must address his point of view. I've explained. I said we've been debating gender-based violence as PAC and nothing changes. Men must behave. We must stop talking and act. What is wrong with that?
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Nyotso. Honorable
Speaker,
Nkomo, continue.
Honorable Speaker, as we debate on the international recognized 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children, I wish to take this opportunity to pay respect to the women and children who have lost their life through gender-based violence and femicide. We convey our sincere condolences to the family and friends of all those who have lost their lives to what was declared the second pandemic, gender-based violence. Gender-based violence remains a serious issue in many countries around the world, including our own. Many interventions to address this phenomenon have been rolled out by government. However, reducing rates of violence remains a grave challenge. To ensure a coordinated national response to the pandemic of gender-based violence, government approved the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence. The plan set out to provide a cohesive strategic framework to guide the national response to gender-based violence and femicide. The plan has 6 overreaching pillars for implementation. While progress has been made, it is reported to be slow. Parliament passed extensive legislation to combat and prevent gender-based violence and femicide. The President assented to the pieces of legislation commonly referred to as the 3 Gender-Based Violence Acts. When we deliberated on these policies of legislation, we acknowledged that they were not a silver bullet in fixing the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide. We all called for a collaboration amongst all sectors of society. Outside of legislation sphere, many interventions have been rolled out. One such intervention is the enhanced capacity in the Eastern Cape Forensic Science Laboratory. This facility will assist greatly in the investigation of gender-based violence and femicide cases, and this is most welcome. While much is being done, much more still needs to be done to ensure that GBVF is a thing of the past and women and children feel safe as envisioned in a national development plan. Honorable Speaker, what is key in addressing GBV is acknowledging that the overwhelming majority of instances of violence are perpetrated by men against both women and other men. It is generally accepted that in the fight against gender-based violence, men cannot be left behind. The focus in GBV prevention has therefore increasingly turned to working with men, with interventions motivated by a desire to address the role of men in violence perpetration, and recognizing that masculinity and gender-related social norms are implicated in violence. On such intervention is One Man Can, which is a campaign initiated by Sonke Gender Justice, an NGO working to prevent gender violence in South Africa. In partnership with government and various national and international organizations, the campaign is designed to support men and boys to end domestic sexual violence and promote healthy, equitable relationships between genders, and to reduce the spread and impact of HIV and AIDS. The One Man Can program is one of the few masculinities-focused intervention currently being implemented in the country, and it has been structured and implemented in line with current best practices, literature, and understanding of such intervention. The historical context of families and family policy in South Africa is critical when considering GBV. Our entrenched secular labor migration violently disrupted the family structure. These disruptions meant that biological parents, especially fathers, were not living with their dependent children in the same household on a daily basis. The absence of the father in a boy's life has had devastating effect. In many cases, the system left the boy child without any role model. The presence of role model who act as examples of positive masculinity is highlighted as an aspect that which can make interventions more successfully, along with the existence of a supportive peer groups. Honorable Speaker, the Blesser phenomenon gained popularity in the country around 2016. A large body of research exists and revealed that transactional sex is a significant theme within the phenomenon of Blesser and Plessy relationship. Research has demonstrated that transactional sex has contributed to an increase in HIV infection rate, especially among women aged between 15 and 24, as well as concerning increase in teenage pregnancy. While these are desired realities of Blesser-Plessy relationship, The one that is most concerning is the current climate in South Africa in the increase of GBV, intimate partner violence and femicide. The blesser phenomenon contributes significantly to a patriarchal culture that objectifies women, and this culture is the root cause of violence and abuse inflicted upon women. We must reject this phenomenon. Women must have agency over their own lives and bodies. The objectification of women must never be accepted. Must never be accepted. Sorry, no? It's the technology. It must never be accepted. We agree with the sentiments of the former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who said, I quote, there is one universe, truth, applicable to all countries, cultures, and communities. Violence against women is never acceptable, never excusable, never tolerable. I close quote. Stable, healthy families are at the heart of strong society. It is within a family's environment that an individual's physical, emotional, and psychological development occurs. It is from our family that we learn unconditional love. We understand right from wrong, and we gain empathy, respect, and self-regulation. The absence of a stable and nurturing family environment has a profoundly damaging impact on the individual, often leading to behavior which profoundly damages the society. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, it is important that men appreciate that they have a responsibility towards their own children. The responsibility cannot be abdicated to women only. Financial support is also not enough. Men need to play an active role in raising their own offspring and contributing to a better society. No man is an island. We all have a duty towards protecting women and children. We all have a duty in increasing a safer South Africa. The fight against gender-based violence will be won when we all come together hand in hand in creating a better South Africa for all. I thank you.
I thank you, Honorable Member, Honorable Nkomo. Honorable Member, as we conclude the debate this afternoon, I don't know how many of you are aware that the President of the Republic today is addressing a continental body of men on issues of gender-based violence. I'm raising this because it is the first in our continent for us to bring men under the same roof and address this very issue. That is highly commendable, and I think the House will then convey that so that this continues. I thank you, honorable members. The 13th order, Secretary, will you read the 13th order of the day?
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Defense and Military Veterans on 2022-23 annual report of AMSCO and Castle Control Board.
I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the report be adopted.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Requests for declarations of vote have been received. I will now allow up to 2 minutes, one member of each political party wishing to make a declaration, an opportunity to do so. Thank you. DA?
Chairperson, Arms Corps was established to satisfy the requirements of our Defence Force in respect of defence material and is financially dependent on the Defence Force acquisition appetite and the transfer from Department of Defence to secure their sustainability. Initially, Arms Corps included Denel, which became the failing state-owned enterprise after its unbundling in the early 90s. At the time, Arms Corps was a global leader of innovative defence material development, manufacturing and application. Since then, both have experienced spectacular decline to the embarrassing situation they are now in. The NEL lost its global competitive edge and its viability under the watch of Minister Gordhan and the Department of Public Enterprises, but is still the original equipment manufacturer of some of our critical prime mission equipment. It will be devastating for our defense capabilities if we lose that too. There are two options. One, privatize the viable divisions based on the successful RDM and Hensoldt models, or two, amalgamate only the strategic required divisions under Arms Corps and liquidate the rest. Do not forget the abused role of Arms Corps by the ANC in the infamous arms scandal in the 90s, state capture, and the discredited ANC cadre deployment policy. Arms Corps is struggling due to the inability of the Minister and the Commander-in-Chief to prioritize and fund strategic prime mission equipment acquisition, maintenance, and upgrades. In the meantime, money is wasted by Arms Corps in finding alternatives to become another failing state-owned enterprise. They should focus on their core role and the responsibility as a strategic acquisition agent and to help regaining our lost defense capabilities. Minister, this is your responsibility and is another failure to be added to your legacy. I thank you.
Thank you. The EFF.
Chairperson, the Economic Freedom Fighters rejects the budgetary review and recommendations report on Arms Corps and the Castle of Good Hope. As a state entity, Arms Corps is supposed to be the bedrock of the country's defense capabilities. Together with PLENARY, this entity has been subjected to abysmal management and has failed to live up to expectations. Suffering from the severe impacts of budget cuts, the entity has failed to leverage the vast scientific and technological capacities it has to commercialize some of the products of its products. Arms Corps should never depend on the state for its operations. It ought to have its own capacity to finance the functions while providing the SANDF with cutting-edge technology for the defense of the nation. Over and above that, we are unable to fully maintain and service most of our missionaries today, and there is no long-term planning. The budget for research and development has been dramatically reduced, depriving country of important foothold on recent technologies. We reject the report.
Thank you. IFP.
Thank you, as Chairperson. AMCO stands at the center of the quality and delivery of the Defense Force. Therefore, it is of critical importance that it remains functional, effective, diligent, and delivers on its constitutional mandate. However, the IFP notes with concern that despite this, the corporation has not been spared from the financial strain under which the broader defense industry is in. Naturally, this has led to the ineffective maintenance of prime mission equipment, which has forced the entity's need to diversify its income stream in order to sustain itself. The CCP falls victim of this, or to this as well, with a growing need to focus on increasing its revenue generation. There are still a few pressing matters that the board needs to address, such as the security of tourists at the castle and the need for fencing and other security measures to be enhanced. Honourable Chair, I want to take this moment to commend Arms Corps for its effort in decreasing fruitless expenditure this financial year. This is proof that with a willingness, effort, and efficiency, state entities can be turned around for the better. We accept the report.
Thank you. FF Plus.
No declaration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. ACDP.
No declaration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. UDM. UDM. ATM. Good.
No declaration, House Chair.
Thank you. NFP. AIC. Cope.
Speak now, no? Go slow.
No
Honorable-
declaration. No
Thank
declaration.
you, Honorable Loache. PAC.
Chair, PAC supports this report, but no declaration, sure.
Thank you. Al-Jama.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. Honorable House Chair, President Ramaphosa has come out very strongly that no arms must be sold to Israel. Although the Treasury published a report that we were selling arms to Israel, we later got a report from DIRCO that that is not the case. It is important that the Arms Corps continues its work, but only for the Defence Force. It shouldn't sell arms to those that want to commit genocide and to kill women and children. Now that we are on the eve of 16 days of activism against women and children, and that we are about to conclude a united UN convention to combat violence against women and children. Al-Jama supports this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The ANC.
Thank you very much, House Chair. I come before the sitting today on behalf of the African National Congress to express our unwavering support for the budgetary review and recommendation report presented by the Portfolio Committee on Defense and Military Veterans, particularly on the 2022-23 annual reports of AMSCO and the Castle Control Board. While we acknowledge the challenges highlighted in the report, we commend the diligent work of AMSCO in managing and executing contracts worth 17.22 billion during the 2022-23 financial year. The ANC recognizes the critical role that AMSCO plays in supporting the SANDF and in contributing the country's defense capabilities. In light of concerns raised by the committee regarding the prime mission equipment, repair and maintenance value chain, contracting systems, and the efficiency in military environment, we fully endorse the recommendation for the Auditor General of South Africa to conduct the performance audit. This proactive step aligns accountability, optimal utilization of resources within the defense sector. Additionally, Chair, the ANC acknowledges the valuable contributions of the current AMSCO board and urges the Minister of Defense to prioritize the appointment of new board with a composition and expertise that reflects the dual requirements of supporting the DoD and pursuing commercial opportunities. The ANC supports the call for detailed breakdowns of contract values, updates on the Oryx and the Roy Falk helicopter fleets, and further information on Project Hoof Easter. Turning to the Castle Control Board, we appreciate the board's effort in preserving and protecting the cultural and military heritage of the Castle of Good Hope. Despite the challenges posed by the ongoing pandemic, the ANC recognizes the strategies prioritized outlined by the CCB and supports its commitment to the securing of the castle's future sustainability. In conclusion, Chair, the ANC fully endorses the recommendations of the committee, and we are confident that through
The time
collaborative
is up.
efforts.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. The ANC supports.
Thank you. I put the motion again. Are there any objections?
EFF objects. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mafanya. Any other? None. With the objections, the report is thus agreed to. Can we have the 14th order, Secretariat?
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Defense and Military Veterans on 2022-23 annual report of Department of Defense.
May I now recognize the Honorable, the Chief Whip of the Majority Party, the Honorable
Thank you, House
Programming
Chair.
Whip?
Thank you, House Chair. On behalf of the Chief Whip of the Majority Party, I move that the report be adopted.
Thank you. There are requests for declaration. May I allow the DA?
Thank you, Chair. Our Defence Force has dropped from the first place in 2022 to now the third strongest in Africa. What a shame. Under your watch, Minister, our Defence Force and its capabilities have deteriorated, most notably in the South African Navy, with 1 out of 4 frigates, 1 out of 4 Lynx helicopters, and 1 out of 3 submarines serviceable. You have admitted in a written answer that 85% of the Air Force's aircraft are now grounded, which is a national disaster. Last week, we have seen the last of the CASAs now also be beyond economical repair. We have 1 cargo aircraft left for all our logistical support domestically and internationally, support to our paratroopers, special forces, and airborne infantry. We have 0 maritime air reconnaissance and patrol capability. We have 5 out of 39 Oryx helicopters, the workhorse for the drop-offs, evacs, medivacs, airborne infantry, disaster relief, and the transport of the commander-in-chief. With 4 in DRC in Cabo Delgado, 1 is left in South Africa. We have 1 out of 11 Rooivalk strategic helicopters that is used to escort flights in and out of the red zones. We have 6 out of 35 Pilatus PC-7 fixed-wing pilot trainers and only 2 out of 26 Gripens. The budgeted hours for flying and seagoing hours have been reduced to a level that it threatens the minimum pilot competency rating requirement. Instead of funding from the medium-term budget, for urgent maintenance and upgrades, we got a 700 million rand baseline budget cut, of which 500 million is to come from maritime combat capability, which amounts was required towards the upgrade of 1 frigate. Add the unfunded
Thank you very much. Your
soldiers
time
of
is
400
up.
million
Thank you.
for the 1.1
Honorable
billion
Mare, your
taken
time
off
is
our
up.
baseline. I thank you.
Thank you. EFF?
Thank you very much. The South African National Defence Force, with the constant budget cuts, have been put under tremendous strain by the overwhelming demands to defend the country at all costs. The President is forever deploying our soldiers beyond the scope of the allocated budget. The President and Treasury are complicit on the underperformance of our army and expose our army into dangerous situations that are untenable. The EFF supports the budget.
Thank you. I'm reminded you are seated next to Honorable Letlape. Honorable Letlape, the day we welcomed you in the house, you were not here. Can you stand up so that they see you? Thank you. IFP?
Thank you, House Chairperson. The financial status of the Department of Defense for the fiscal year 2022-23 shows a warrant turned on irregular expenditure with a total amount of 555.9 million rands. However, this does not encompass the full extent of the financial challenges faced by the department. The committee in its report has identified discrepancies in the reporting of over expenditure on compensation of employees, amount to 2.9 billion rands, which was classified as unauthorized expenditure. Major contributors to irregular expenditure in this regard uncovered that non-competitive bidding process were undertaken. This highlighted a problem where the flow of money in the department is concerning, as it left open the misuse, the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, through showing a decrease from 3.3 million rands in financial year 2021-22 to 2.5 million rands in financial year 22-23. Remains too high. The slow implementation of recommendations and consequence management as highlighted by the DOD is an issue that requires urgent attention. However, Chairperson, there are some burning issues that I cannot let rest, such as the poor state of military hospitals, which are in disrepair. These hospitals are meant to even provide medical attention to our highest ranking officials, such as the President, due to the lack of maintenance and strong governance. Even these.
Thokoze, Ndabezitha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sayamukela kanale.
Thank you. FF plus.
No declaration. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you. ACDP.
Chairperson, the ACDP shares the deep concerns expressed by other speakers about the financial constraints facing this department. It is unacceptable to expect this department to fulfill its constitutional duties when it faces such financial constraints. And we, from the ACDP side, would urge Parliament, who has the power to amend budgets in next year, in February 2024, when we deal with these budgets, to use those powers to ensure that the Defence Force is properly financed so that it can fulfill its constitutional duties. I thank you.
Thank you. The UDM. ATM. Good.
House Chair, we have no declaration.
Thank you. NFP.
Thank you, House Chairperson. National Freedom Party supports the report table here today. Allow me to raise a few concerns. Of course, the irregular expenditure, which seems to be getting out of hand, fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and the qualified audit opinion that the department received. However, let us welcome the intervention by the President to ensure that the Defence Force assists the South African Police Services in dealing with illegal mining in the country. And we also call on the President to intervene in the gang violence that is claiming a lot of lives, particularly in the Cape Flats, by deploying the South African National Defence Force. One of the challenges we found previously when the Defence Force was deployed, that they were working in isolation instead of working together with the South African Police Services. Now, Chairperson, as the National Freedom Party, we are calling for a thorough investigation into all South Africans that have been in the front line of the Israeli Defense Force and that are involved and are responsible for atrocities that were committed against the Palestinian people. We want them to be identified, charged criminally, and handed over to the International Criminal Court. It would appear that because of a loophole in the system, in the foreign military assistance, and by virtue of them having dual citizenship, we will not be able to charge them and try them in our country. So we believe that we must identify them, charge them, and hand them over to the International Criminal Court. But more importantly, we need to deal with this issue of dual citizenship, where members are going and committing atrocities against others in different countries because they have dual citizenship. And as we could see very, very clear, many people are coming out saying that it is the Israeli Defense Force that were responsible for the number of Israelis that were killed in this war that started on the 7th
And
of
thank
October.
you very much.
Nonsense.
Thank you.
Honorable Swart, please, we don't do that, and I don't expect that from you.
My apologies,
Please.
Chair.
Thank you. AIC. Cope.
Support the report, Chair.
Thank you. PAC.
PAC supports this report, Chair.
Thank you. Al-Jama.
Thank you very much, Honourable House Chair. Honourable House Chair, Al-Jama does not take lightly the concerns of the presidency that there are attempts to undermine South Africa, and we heard the story about the manipulation of the rand by the banks. Al-Jama is now further concerned that the Honourable Marais has now assessed the capability of our Defence Force. But let me tell him that in spite of the very negative report, our Defence Force is ready to protect our country. Al-Jama supports the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The ANC.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. The ANC supports the BRRR report of the Department of Defense and Military Veterans. While acknowledging the challenges highlighted in the report, it is imperative that we recognize the considerable efforts and dedication the Department of Defense in fulfilling its constitutional mandate. The ANC commends the department for its commitment to defending and protecting the Republic, its territorial integrity, and its people. In the face of complex challenges, the department has shown resilience and determination. We appreciate the ongoing work to address issues raised by the Auditor General, emphasizing the importance of consequence management for improved governance. The ANC understands the urgency of filling key positions within the department promptly, and we encourage expedited efforts to ensure a stable leadership structure. We also recognize the department's commitment to fulfilling international obligations such as the UN mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We acknowledge the decision regarding the SADC, the South African National Defence Force contingents in this mission are contingent on formal plans from the UN. While concerns have been raised about budgetary constraints and the potential impact of mid-year cuts, we affirm our commitment to working collaboratively to ensure sustained funding for critical initiatives. The ANC supports the call for increased funding for border safeguarding technology, patrol vehicles, and upgrading of naval and air force capabilities. Thank you, Honourable House Chairperson. The
Thank
ANC
you.
support.
I put the motion again. Are there any objections? No objections agreed to. The 15th order, Secretary.
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Defense and Military Veterans on 2022-23 annual report of Department of Military Veterans.
May I now recognize the Honourable, the Chief Whip of the Majority Party?
Thank you, House Chairperson. I move that the report be adopted.
Thank you. There has been a request for declaration, the DA.
Thank you, Chair. This is one of the most dysfunctional departments and is typical of the ANC's failed state and the disrespectful way the government is treating our military veterans who fought on both sides and sacrificed their lives so we can have a democratic future. This is the slow pace of rolling out the pension benefits is painful for military veterans, as many of them relied on the cabinet promises but are still waiting and will face another dark and suffering Christmas. Another concern is that a number of military veterans have thus far not received their promised houses due to the failure by the Department and Department of Human Settlements to provide them with adequate houses, which failure has led to the invasion of privately owned properties, for instance, in Aloe Ridge Flats in Westgate, Pietermaritzburg. Why should private businesses suffer the consequences of the failing government departments? The failure by the DMV to finalize the subsidized public transport strategy is making it extremely difficult for military veterans to access services, for instance, healthcare, when they are unemployed and cannot afford public or taxi transport costs. The failure by the department to submit its annual financial statements, performance plan, and annual report for auditing within the prescribed timeframe is unacceptable and is a clear proof that this department has dismally failed to deliver on its mandate, and the Minister of Defence and Military Veterans should be ashamed that this is happening under her watch. We appeal to the Minister to pay more attention and ensure that this department delivers to deserved military veterans as required by law. I thank you.
Thank you, EFF.
Thank you, Chair. The Military Veterans Department has been dragged down by sheer incompetence, unskilled labor, and lack of consequence management. The department can hardly account for vacant senior positions that have become a source of non-service delivery to military veterans. The military veterans' houses have been allocated to non-military veterans across the provinces. There are no measures to counter illegal occupancy. There are companies registered under military veterans that get preferential tenders, and yet the recipients are not military veterans. The EFF rejects this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. IFP.
Thank you, as Chairperson. The state of our Department of Military Veterans and the challenges faced by those who have dedicated their lives to safeguarding our nation's sovereignty have long been a burning issue for the IFP. The important mission of this department has unfortunately witnessed a decline in effectiveness over the past few years due to inadequate government management. Our military veterans, the custodian of our national defense, have faced a series of hardships that demand our urgent attention. The poor treatment meted out by our military veterans has manifested in the long-awaited payment of pensions. The report paints a worrisome picture that many deserving veterans have not received their rightful pension payments on time. The wait has been over 2 years, where they still exist some who have not received their payouts, which begs the question, what has a government been doing all this time? Furthermore, the housing needs of our significant majority of our military veterans have been neglected. This oversight is deeply concerning, as the very individuals who put their lives on line for our nation find themselves without a basic necessity of the home, and it's imperative that we address this shortcoming. Chair, the situation is dire within a department. There is a scenario where medical aid contributions system lack continuity, leaving our heroes without well-planned and arranged way of accessing healthcare during treatment. This mess in the system is an insult to those who have sacrificed so much for our nation. Thank you, support.
Thank you. FF Plus.
No declaration, Chair.
Thank you. ACDP.
Chairperson, the ACDP shares the concerns that have been expressed about the situation facing our military veterans and the budgetary constraints. We really believe that far more should be done in this regard, and the report highlights the deficiencies in this regard. Chairperson, I would quickly just like to address the issue to suggest that Israeli forces committed the atrocities is preposterous on 7 October in the extreme, particularly when Hamas themselves boasted of the attacks and spread videos on social media of their barbaric attacks. I thank you.
Thank you. UDM, ATM. Unless, honorable members, I know that certain parties feel offended if I have to call them. These are declarations. I only have the party name. So don't be offended if I call your party. Good.
We have no declaration, Chair.
Thank you. NFP.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me start off by saying that I think we seem to have many Judas Iscariots, even in this National Assembly, that no matter what, they will try to defend the atrocities that are being committed. Let us also not forget, it is the very same state of Israel that colluded with apartheid South Africa, that these military veterans of ours gave their lives to protect South Africa and liberate us. And it is for that reason, Chairperson, that we need to ensure that they are well taken care of. Whether you talk about pension, whether you talk about medical aid, whether you talk about housing, these servants of us who actually gave, many of them who gave up their lives fighting this apartheid government, must be well taken care of. And it is very disappointing there to note that this department particularly has not spent the monies that were allocated, and there are concerns being raised particularly by the military veterans. So let us take care of them. Let us ensure that they are quite happy. And I want to reiterate again, it is the Israeli Defense Force. This has come first-hand information from Jewish hostages that came there unannounced, opened fire, and killed many Israelis. Let us not run away from. There's no doubt that Hamas did attack on the 7th of October. There's no dispute about that. When did the people die? It was only when the Israeli Defense Force opened fire without even warning those that were there. Now, this is not coming from Hamas. This is coming from the Israelis themselves. But remember, once a Judas, always a Judas. You're not going to be able to change that. As long as there is money is available, they will distort all the truth. The NFP supports this report.
Thank you. AIC. Order, honorable members, order. AIC. I'm going to ask the speaker if there was a request for showing of any money or something in the house. As we know that everything that you, even a placard, you have to get permission first. So I'm going to check on that. Cope?
No declaration.
Thank you. PAC?
Honorable Chair, whilst we support this report, but there's a lot that must be addressed to the military veterans. The issues of housing allowance to veterans, the issues of medical aid. When a military veteran passes away, the wife of the military veteran does not get help from the medical facilities in the army camps, in the army. So we must address those issues of military, including the issue of verification that is not yet resolved. If those issues can be resolved, I think it will be better for military veterans because they are dying every day. Otherwise, PAC supports this report.
Thank you. Al-Jama? ANC.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. This financial year marks the beginning of the payout of pension benefits to the deserving military veterans. We applaud the department for making this giant leap. We know that not all FV have received their benefits. We are aware of the benefit. We are aware that the benefit is short of what was expected. However, this is welcomed. This is a welcomed beginning. The department is currently working of transport benefits. This proves to be an uphill battle given that our transport network does not have an enabling support framework. The department is working to address weaknesses that have been identified, which have impacted on the military veterans receiving uninterrupted support. The appeal board has been populated with new board members. It paves way for those who are aggrieved by decision of the official can then seek recourse with this body. The ANC supports this report. Thank you.
Thank you. I again put the motion. Are there any objections? No objections, agreed to. May I now ask the secretary to read the 16th order?
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labour.
Omelu Soswepi. Rakela Pambi.
Ke a leboga modulasetulo, ke tshisinya gore pegelo e e amogelwe ke ntlo.
Thank you very much. There are requests for declarations. The DA.
Honourable Chairperson, the budgetary review and recommendations report of the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labour is not worth the paper it's printed on. South Africa has one of the highest unemployment rates in the world, coming on for 45%, but the Department of Employment and Labour is like a deer in the headlights, and the Portfolio Committee's recommendations are of no help to the deer. Our dear Minister has apparently given orders to spend more than 15 billion rand from the UIF's surplus funds on creating 2 million work opportunities before the end of the financial year in March. If these reports are true, then clearly the minister is in panic mode. The instruction is irrational and a recipe for looting. The UIF and the equally ill-starred Compensation Fund can't even file their annual financial statements on time. Productivity SA is singularly unproductive, but you would be hard-pressed to find anything of substance about any of this in the BRRR. Sadly, the Department of Employment and Labour has failed to tackle its expanded mandate of job creation. The department should be focusing its efforts on supporting labour-intensive sectors like light manufacturing and tourism to create new jobs and take on new workers. Through labour market deregulation, the department should be making it easier for businesses to absorb large numbers of relatively unskilled workers into productive employment. And it should be championing the cause of small business owners who are being choked by the extension of collective bargaining agreements and other onerous labour regulations. In the face of these challenges, the observations and recommendations contained in this report are weak tea, and the DA cannot imbibe them. Thank you.
Thank you. The EFF.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, this country's labor relations legislations and policies, the department's annual performance plans, and the oversight activities executed by the Portfolio Committee are adequate to change the labor relations environment for the better in terms of job creation and enforcement of workers' rights. The biggest challenge is the minister and the department, who constantly show signs of lack of capacity to avail both financial and human resources to implement the set policies. Legislation empowers the minister to hold accountable the employers who deliberately undermine CCMA awards in favor of the workers. Labor inspectors don't have vehicles designed for off-roading, hence it is almost impossible for them to do inspections in the farming sector. Corrupt, incompetent, irrelevantly or underqualified officials are hell-bent in mismanaging the finances of the department and its entities. When time comes ripe, they feel they have looted enough, they resign to evade accountability. Come 2024, we call on registered voters to vote for the EFF, the only political organization with a labor desk that is always determined to fight for the rights of the poor and neglected workers 24/7. The EFF supports the budget review report and its recommendations. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ma'am Konto. The IFP.
Honourable Chair, it is of a deep sense of concern that the state of our labour and job sector in South Africa is in turmoil. Over the past few years, we have witnessed a significant decline, and last week's debate emphasized crucial role of willing government with robust mechanisms for accountability and governance in reducing poverty and unemployment. The recent loss of 97,000 jobs year on year between March 2022 and March 2023, with an additional decrease of 21,000 jobs in the first quarter alone, paints a worrisome picture. The trend of job shedding offers little hope for recovering industries because of the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is particularly concerning that despite numerous calls for government intervention to promote job creation, 5 out of 8 industries have yet to recover from the impact of COVID-19. In addition to these alarming employment statistics, the committee's scrutiny of the annual report of the department and its entities has revealed that urgently demand our attention and corrective action. It is unacceptable that both Unemployment Insurance Fund and Compensation Fund have failed to submit their annual financial statements and annual performance reports for the second consecutive year, showing an unwillingness to be democratically accountable to the people of this country. This lack of submission impedes our ability as Parliament and, more importantly, the people to exercise oversight accountability and offer corrective measures. And furthermore, Across government, we are seeing a growing number of entities that operate as if they are unaccountable and as if the state funds are their own to do as they please. Thank you very much. We support anyway. We support the report.
Thank you. The IFF Plus.
Honourable Chairperson, the performance of this department and its entities leaves much to be desired. It is clear that the Minister is only interested in driving his outdated ANC agenda, instead of ensuring that his department and its entities is properly managed to the benefit of the people out there. The UIF and Compensation Fund, the two largest entities of this department, and the two entities on which desperate South Africans are most dependent, have yet again failed to submit their annual financial statements and performance plans for audit, and are completely dysfunctional. The department is responsible for these entities and fail to perform any consequence management. There have been calls to place the UIF under administrations, calls that the Minister ignorantly ignored, and the Compensation Fund is currently undergoing another turnaround strategy. Further confirmation that everything the ANC touches is in need of a turnaround strategy. The Tuja Capital Fund scandal happened under the Minister's nose and is another example of mismanagement and a lack of oversight by political heads. It's also proof of political heads being involved in the most shameful scandals, whilst those below them have to take the blame. This brings me to the Minister's comrades on the Portfolio Committee, who instead of ensuring that there's proper oversight, actually only does PR for the department. The chairperson refuses to heed warnings and observations from members of the opposition and only supports the ANC PR agenda. This contributes to the mismanagement and failure of this department.
Thank you very much.
Does not
Your time is up. ACDP.
No declaration. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you. UDM. ATM. Good.
And no declaration, House Chair.
Thank you. NFP.
Thank you, Chairperson. The National Freedom Party will support the report tabled here today, but allow me also to draw the attention of this House to my concerns that when this war started in Israel, 18,500 workers were affected. Many of them remain missing up to this very single day, perhaps held in detention cells. And if you look at the plight of the workers in the hospitals with no water, no electricity, no medicines, to such an extent, some of these workers reported that when they were treating patients, patients had maggots because there was nothing there to actually clean them. That's how the situation is in Gaza after the Zionist state of Israel had bombed these hospitals. And these are how the workers have been treated. In fact, 3,200 workers were chased back to Gaza on the 7th of October. Now, Chairperson, one of my concerns locally is just that it's the problem of foreign nationals that are working in the country, earning a minimum salary of 60 Rand a day at the expense of locals. Inspectors in the country are doing very little or nothing to ensure that there is compliance, which affects our unemployment rate in the country. But very importantly, also, I want to raise the issue of the very stringent labor conditions on the ground, which is making it very difficult for small businesses to survive with the number of cheap imports coming into the country and the stringent labor conditions that small businesses have to meet, which they can't. Businesses are closing down, and the high levels of unemployment is a reason as a result of that. And I think we need to address that. There needs to be some balance so that businesses can be more successful, employ more people at the same time. The NFP supports this report. Thank you.
Thank you. AIC. COPE. PAC. Honorable Shivambu, please. Ke kgale o nnetse go disturba. Al PAC. Oh, Al Jama. ANC.
House Chairperson, minus the hysteria that was presented here by DA and hallucinations of.
Is your mic on?
You can't hear me.
No, I hear you now, sorry.
Thanks, House Chair. I'm saying minus the hysteria and hallucinations of the DA. House Chair's African National Congress will appreciate the commitment by the department to speedily deal with all issues raised by the Auditor General with regard to Unemployment Insurance Fund and Compensation Fund, who failed to timeously submit their annual financial statements and performance reports for the 2022-2023 financial years, including the previous one. The commitment by the department to correct this problem, including dealing with attended issues of the audit action plans, as has now happened, is highly appreciated. It should be noted that the department's performance has significantly improved, more so with the unqualified audit outcomes in some of its entities that include the CCMA, including the department itself, now with matters of emphasis, neglect, and even productivity SA. We note and appreciate and support steps taken by Honorable Minister on the irregular allocation of 5 billion rand to a company whose credentials are questionable. For this being an indication that our commitment by ANC-led government to uproot corruption knows no boundaries. This includes steps taken to recover funds fraudulently allocated during COVID-19 pandemic through the fraudulent tests, claims and allocations. We agree, House Chair, that NEDLEC, where social partners interact, should continue to collaborate to resolve outstanding issues that relate to fulfillment of economic reconstruction and recovery plan objectives, and as well as to include, but not limited to, the agreements and finalization of the social compact. The recent upswing
On that score, thank you very much. Your time is up.
ANC support the report.
Thank you. I put the motion again. Are there any objections?
Please note the objection of the DA.
Noted.
Please note the objection of the FF plus.
Noted.
Please note the objection of EFF.
Thank you. With those objections, the report is thus agreed to. The secretary will read the 17th order.
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Standing Committee on Finance.
I will now recognize the DA since there are requests for declarations.
Thank you, Chair. So the ANC government doesn't have to tell us what they care for. We can just look at the provincial allocations budget, and the budget will tell you what they care for. So 125 million cut from agricultural support program. So they don't care about emerging farmers. 7 million rand cut from the land care program, which is for poverty relief. So they don't care about the poor. 58 million rand cut from early childhood development and 1.6 billion rand cut from education infrastructure. So they don't care about children. 28 million rand cut from the HIV and AIDS grant and 1 billion rand cut from the district health program grant, 440 million rand cut from the health facility grant. So they don't care about the sick. 50 million rand cut from math, science and technology grants, 68 million rand cut from community library grant. So they don't care about education. 1.7 billion rand cut from human settlements development and 477 million rand cut from informal settlements upgrading partnerships. So they don't care about houses or land reform. 31 million rand cut from the expanded public works program, so they don't care about employment opportunities for the unemployed, and 550 million rand cut from the provincial road maintenance grant, so they don't care about road infrastructure. So, and lastly, 17.5 billion rand increased for ANC state millionaire managers, because the only people the ANC really cares about is the cadres who become richer and richer, and the South Africans who become poorer and poorer. And that is why DA Premier Alan Windey has declared an intergovernmental dispute with Treasury, because the DA-led Western Cape finds it unacceptable that over R1 billion of budgeted funds for service delivery in the province have been cut from their allocation. And unlike the ANC, the DA cares. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The EFF.
Thank you, House Chair. From the outset, the EFF wants to make it abundantly clear that both the Minister and his DG's response to the grey listing by the FATF were really underwhelming. They simply just kicked for touch. The National Treasury's failure to improve audit quality to clean audit raises concern about Treasury's capacity to provide exemplary leadership in financial management. The AG reported a lack of disclosure by the National Treasury regarding the reasons for fruitless and wasteful expenditure related to the infamous IFMS project. What are they hiding? Questions arise on financial oversight and management, as National Treasury requires condonation for a substantial 265 million of irregular expenditure, eroding confidence in the department. National Treasury's refusal to accept findings on irregular expenditure from both the AG and SIU raises concern about accountability, arrogance, and disrespect for specialist institutions. AG's confirmation of 66 dysfunctional municipalities highlights the impact of cadre deployment gone wrong, contributing to incompetence and the lack of required skills. Whereas the EFF commends the OTO in that 80% of the rulings were in favor of the taxpayer. However, it is concerning that SARS was in the wrong for 80% of the time. EFF expresses concern regarding the disappearance of the drug bust by SARS in KZN, that is still within the Hawks, and this is raising questions about the corruption at the highest levels. As I conclude, the EFF is concerned about the non-compliance to the employment equity targets by top management at SARS, the fact that we put 3 top men there, where are the women? Finally, Chair, EFF condemned the Minister for failure to communicate plans for the expiring term of the current SARS
Thank you. Your time is up.
The time for an African woman at the helm of SARS has come.
Thank
EFF
you, Honourable
rejects-
Manye.
Yes, Chair, we reject this.
Chairperson, let me then make an input on behalf of Honourable Nkosi Buthelezi. House Chairperson, the nation and subsequently the economy have been praised for being resilient and for weathering the storms that come with hardship and a lack of economic growth. But the honest truth is that our economy remains in ICU because of the ruling party's mismanagement, corruption, and lack of vision. The shrinking economy illustrates once more that this government's promises to address socioeconomic challenges such as poverty, unemployment, and dire inequality remain nothing but wishful thinking. Of grave concern is that the recent MTBPS revealed a multi-billion-dollar revenue shortfall linked to a reduction in spending by consumers, as well as South Africa's ever-increasing unemployment levels. Then we have the crisis that are our SOEs. Their continued bailouts are draining our fiscus. Throwing money, for example, at Eskom without clear intervention plans is a futile exercise. Then budget cuts to key programs which will affect the lives and livelihoods of the poorest speaks to an out-of-touch government. But Chairperson, there is one bright light, and that is that there is an election in 2024. Our people deserve hope, and they deserve job opportunities, not just the 350. They deserve to live in a country where their resources are not stolen through a corrupt government. They deserve a stable and thriving economy, which can only be achieved in 2024 by a change in government. I thank you.
Thank you. FF Plus.
Baie dankie agbare huisvoorsitter. Huisvoorsitter, dit is belangrik om die krisis by nasionale tesourie te herken en te erken. Jaar na jaar word dit misken, maar die feit is dat wanneer jy 'n nasionale tesourie het wat self nie behoorlike finansiële kontrole oor sy eie finansies en sy eie entiteite uitvoer nie, hoe kan hy dit doen? Hoe kan hy sy grondwetlike mandaat om dit van ander departemente en oor ander departemente te doen dan vervul? Dit is hoekom ons openbare finansies in so groot krisis is, want nasionale tesourie kan nie eers sy eie boeke ordentlik bestuur nie. Die ander krisis, huisvoorsitter, is die feit dat nasionale tesourie jaar na jaar verkeerde voorspellings maak. Elke keer met 'n Februarie begroting word daar nie gekyk na goed wat wel voorsien kan word, wanneer groeikoers voorspel word, wanneer die begrotingstekort voorspel word en wanneer ander vooruitskattings, belangrike vooruitskattings waarop die hele begroting gegrond is, gemaak word nie. Hoekom? Want ons politieke invloed en nie wetenskaplike, wiskundige, ekonomiese en logiese benadering. Nasionale tesourie is gekaap en laat homself deur politieke ideologie lei en nie deur wat werklik belangrik is om hierdie land se fiskale posisie te verbeter en die ekonomie te herstel. Ek dank u.
Dankie. ACDP.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the ACDP shares the concerns that have been expressed about the dire fiscal situation facing our nation and the medium-term budget policy statement, and as reflected in this report, have made it very clear that the economic growth outlook is very precarious, mainly as a result of ongoing power cuts, the logistics crisis, high inflation, and rising borrowing costs. These rising borrowing costs are set to crowd out much-needed expenditure on other much-needed items, such as crime fighting, such as education and health. We are facing a fiscal crisis, and it is due to expenditure on SOEs, unlimited challenges at ports and rails, and we now see the Transnet is looking for 100 billion rand bailout. We see logistics challenges of kilometers-long trucks at Richards Bay, of ships at Durban. This cannot continue. Previously, in the previous financial years and following COVID-19, we were able to have almost a windfall tax collection as a result of the commodities boom. This has now fallen away and we are facing a fiscal crisis. The ACDP is deeply concerned about this issue as reflected upon in this report. I thank you.
Thank you. UDM? ATM? Good.
Chairperson, we have no declaration. Thanks.
Thank you. NFP?
Thank you, House Chairperson. The National Freedom Party supports the report tabled here today. Let me start off by saying that this department achieved 60% of its targets. And of course, one of the major concerns is something that we raised, and that was the integrated financial management system. Can you imagine if National Treasury pays for services that they didn't receive, where invoices were not even provided? And that was at the highest level. And Treasury is supposed to be the custodians of the funds of this country. Well, we welcome SARS clean audit. Of course, they must get after they go the way they go after us. But I think it's very important, Chairperson, that SARS should relax when it comes to South Africans and go after foreign nationals in this country through whom there's so much of illicit financial flows. These foreign businesses here, there is no compliance measures in place. And again, we want to say, unless you link them from local government, provincial government, directly to SARS, these monies are going to be leaving the country, no accountability. If you collect monies from every foreign-owned business in South Africa, I am quite convinced that we'll be able to reduce the taxes on local South Africans. Right now, it's like taking the blood out of the bone. But let me also draw your attention to what's happening in Palestine, how the Israelis are using economics of restricting the flow of money that rightfully belongs to the Palestinian people to such extent they are suffocating them. on one hand through military intervention and through the other, the fund which rightfully belongs to them. So you can see the challenges that people and for that reason, workers are not getting paid, but they are so committed and dedicated for the cause. And that is why they are the way we are. So we're calling on National Treasury to put more measures in place. Borrowing money for consumption is a disaster.
Thank you.
Thank you. NFP supports. Thank you.
Thank you. AIC. Co.
Honourable Chairperson, unfortunately, I'm using the chairperson's gadgets. We are on the way. I cannot go deeper, but we support the report.
Are you on Honorable Dipuo's gadget?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
yes,
now I get it.
Chairperson.
Thank you.
I've got a problem in connection.
No problem. Thank you. PAC. Al-Jama. The ANC.
Thank you so much, House Chair. I stand on behalf of the African National Congress to support the budgetary review and recommendation report of the Standing Committee on Finance. We welcome the efforts of the National Treasury, which remains steadfast in its commitment to stimulating economic growth, upholding the integrity of the fiscal framework, implementing a redistributive budget, and advancing the effective governance of public finances. The department has intensified efforts to establish stability within local government, state-owned companies, and the public debt landscape. House Chair, the National Treasury Annual Performance Report for the 2022-2023 fiscal year reveals a notable 80.36% of the annual performance plan indicators fully achieved, 14.2% partially achieved, and 5.3% not achieved. The combined partially and not achieved targets amounts to 19% of the total, pinpointing areas that require enhanced focus and strategies to improve efficiency and effectiveness in the upcoming strategic framework and fiscal cycle. We are concerned that National Treasury's performance in 2022-2023 fiscal year marked a decline compared to previous years. This regression is observable from the 88.3% achievement in 2021 and 83.3% in 2019 and 2020. We further note enhanced audit outcomes for the department compared to the previous years, with 11 entities scoring unqualified audit opinions with no findings. This constitutes 69% of the audit in the portfolio, making a significant improvement from the 37% recorded in the previous year. We fundamentally believe that the attainment of clean audits should not only be clean audits, but should unequivocally translate into enhanced service delivery, elevating the lived experience of the people.
Thank you. Honorable members, again, I put the motion. Are there any objections?
Please note the objection of the Democratic Alliance, Chair.
Thank you. Noted.
Followed by the rejection by EFF.
Thank you. With those objections, the report is thus agreed to. Let me take a detour, honorable members, and deal with something else before we continue with the business of the day. May you please call Honorable Sheikh Imam outside to come in. Honorable members, on the 15th of November, 2023, during the debate on the revised fiscal framework, Honorable B.A. Khadebe rose on a point of order to contend that Honorable Manyi had used unparliamentary language in respect of the Minister of Finance. Having now had an opportunity to study the unrevised Hansard, I wish to rule as follows. The remarks of Honorable Manyi were, it is telling that the Minister of Finance decided to table such a supposedly important policy statement and bills related to adjustment budgets and revenue, and other bills, and thereafter decided to go on leave. He could not even wait to finalize the process with Parliament because of the people of South Africa are not taken seriously. I remind members that the privilege of freedom of speech enables us to raise and pursue matters of the public interest. This privilege is only limited by the rules of Parliament. The rules in turn were not intended to constrain members, but rather to ensure that reasoned debate can occur. Honorable members, the remarks of Honorable Manyi are a political statement. It may not be liked or agreed with. Moreover, I want to say that when somebody is on leave and they say he's sick, we need to be considerate. Whether it's a family responsibility leave or sick leave, when we talk, we must be considerate. But honorable members, the remarks of Honorable Manyi, as I said, are a political statement. It may not be liked or agreed with. It is, I therefore do not find the remarks to be unparliamentary as the point of order requested. Thank you. We may proceed with the business of the day. The next one, honorable members, on Tuesday, the 21st of November, during the debate on the statement of the minister in the presidency on the census 2022 result, Dr. Mulder rose on a point of order and said the following, and I quote, "Once again, the Honorable Sheikh Imam finds it impossible to talk about the subject on the order paper. He is referring to issues that have been discussed in Parliament. I ruled that it was not possible at that time to rule that the remark of Mr. Sheikh Imam were irrelevant. I allowed Honorable Sheikh Imam to continue with the speech. As he did so, he made the following remarks, and I quote, Honorable Mulder has a problem. His problem is that he is used to the idea of wanting to indicate and to have boss mentality, where he is the boss and others are the workers. That is his problem. Honorable Swart rose on a point of order and submitted that Mr. Sheikh Imam cast aspersions on Dr. Mulder. I informed the House that I would consult Hansard and revert with a ruling. Having had the opportunity to study the Hansard, I rule as follows. In terms of Rule 85, no member may impute improper motives to any other member or cast personal reflections upon a member's integrity or dignity, or verbally abuse a member in any other way. The use of the word boss refers to another member, to refer to another member has been ruled as unparliamentary on a number of occasions in this House. The phrase boss mentality has historical connotation to our country. It invokes a time which the white persons accorded themselves a superior status to other races, which in their view were supposed to be civil and inferior. To reflect on Dr. Mulder as such, particularly in the context that he is used to dictating to others, implies that Dr. Mulder regards himself as superior based on his race. That impugned the dignity of Dr. Mulder. Honorable members, it cannot be overemphasized that when members participate in debates in the House, they have a unique opportunity to actively inculcate and promote the values of tolerance, diversity, and inclusivity, and set standards and set standard in that regard for the populace to hit. Whilst we are expected to be passionate and robust in confronting issues we debate in the House, we must also show respect and restraint and avoid inflammatory and divisive references to one another. Honorable Sheikh Imam, if you may stand. Your reference to Dr. Mulder as having a bus mentality is unparliamentary, and I would order you to withdraw that remark. Thank you very much. We proceed now with the business of the day as I ask the Secretary to read the 18th order.
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Trade, Industry and Competition.
May I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party?
Thank you, House Chairperson. I move that the report be adopted.
There has been a request for declaration and I will allow the DA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. The Department of Trade, Industry and Competition is now rapidly speeding up the deindustrialization of South Africa, adding to joblessness, driving up inflation, and forcing manufacturers and multinationals to reconsider their investments in our country. The destruction that the department and the ANC government has brought on ordinary people is best illustrated in the recently released Harvard Growth Lab report titled Growth Through Inclusion in South Africa by renowned economist Ricardo Hausman. It is safe to say that no one in the ANC or EFF has actually read that report because that would be too much work for them. So let me outline its findings. Professor Hausman clearly states, and I quote, "Things have been made worse by a mistaken belief that preferential procurement rules could be imposed on complex organizations such as the network industries at little cost. Rather, these rules have been overburdened critical public organizations by adding financial costs, reducing effectiveness, and expanding space for patronage systems to take hold. Let us be clear, BBBEE under the DTIC is the foundation that preferential procurement is built on and continues to be expanded and used as a sledgehammer by the minister and the ANC to inflict even more damage on our country to enrich the ANC elite. The report found that the state on average paid 30% more for goods and services, and now the new procurement policy will allow qualifiers to pay 3 times more for the same competitive goods. This is nothing other than ANC-sponsored corruption. That's why the DA has tabled a social impact bill which will repeal BBBEE from procurement so that the 1 trillion rand in government spending is spent on South Africans and not on members of the ANC to make them rich. This week, VW's international brand boss, Thomas Schaefer, said that he was very worried about the competitiveness of South Africa and that, quote unquote, that he is not in the business of charity. He said that VW workers had done all that they could to mitigate the country's problems and that it's time for governments to step up. The DA does not support this report. Thank you.
15 seconds more. I now recognize EFF.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wish to bring to the attention of this House the need to pray for Zahara, who is critically ill and in ICU due to the deteriorating condition of her liver. The EFF wishes her speedy recovery. The EFF rejects the report because we know that the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition will not bring the necessary changes in this country under the current government. This department could have been at the center of major economic development and job creation, adding billions to our fiscals, but escalating numbers of unemployed speak the contrary. DTIC insists that in the period under review, it focused on attracting and retaining investments, which resulted in facilitating an increase in localization, exports, support for regional integration, particularly capitalizing on opportunities brought by the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. But if this was true, Madam Speaker, this would have translated to an increased fiscus as opposed to the budget cuts that we are faced with. The economic freedom fighters say the economic reconstruction and recovery plan and reimagined industrial strategy would have been tools to change South Africa's fortunes, as this provides incentives through the automotive incentive scheme, Black Industrialist Program, Agro-Processing Support Scheme, Strategic Partnership Program, Aquaculture Development and Enhancement Program, Clothing and Textile Competitiveness Program. The truth is, these programs will not result in positive returns for South Africa, as the current state is incapable of delivering what it promises. As for that,
Honourable
as
Member.
EFF will reject the report.
You must
Thanks.
look at that clock. It will help you. Thank you very much. I now recognize IFP.
Thank you, as Chairperson. The IFP would like to recommend, or to commend, Department of Trade, Industry and Competition on receiving its sixth consecutive clean audit opinion with no irregular expenditure or fruitless and wasteful expenditure incurred for the year 2022-23 financial year. Concerning the constant mismanagement within governmental departments, this department serves as a breath of fresh air. The IFP welcomes the department embarking on the process of restructuring, as we often see governmental departments unnecessarily bloated, which places a heavy budgetary strain on Program 1. However, considering there are quite a high number of posts that are no longer regarded as necessary for the functioning of the department, coupled with the fact that there are a number of senior managerial positions still vacant, it is our hope that there are sections within the department that have been left completely vacant, as this will cause great instability. Furthermore, the IFP calls upon the department to address the anti-competitive behavior of poultry feed producers as soon as and as swiftly as possible, as it is heavily affecting the cost of poultry products for consumers. Food security, especially in rural areas, is already one of the biggest challenges in our country faces. We cannot allow the greed of the few to further burden poorer households and small-scale poultry farmers. We support the report.
Thank you. I now recognize FF Plus.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. The Department for Trade, Industry and Competition had been allocated 10.8 billion rand for the 2022-23 financial year, down from 11.8 billion rand in the 2021-22 financial year. The critical role of this department in the economic growth and job creation trajectory is highly underestimated as it is rolled out in its 10 programs. The current headwinds that South Africa is facing, such as avian influenza, load shedding, impedes on economic growth with a negative impact on the economy, industries, and small and medium and micro enterprises, as it disrupts the manufacturing processes. Load shedding, corruption, and state capture is, of course, a legacy of the ANC government. Chair, BBBE, unfortunately, remains one of the main goals of this department, as it is already common knowledge that BBBE, as it is rolled out by the government, is one of the main causes for state capture. South Africa is unfortunately becoming a more and more so in the undesirable destiny for foreign investment, as Volkswagen recently declared. The Freedom Front Plus would have supported this BRRR report if it was not for the poor governance, bad policy and corruption and BBBE. No support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. ACTP.
No declaration. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you. UTM. UTM. Okay. ATM. ATM. Good. Good. NFP, Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Maybe you should give a bonus for attendance. Maybe it might be different. The National Freedom Party supports the report on the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. Yeah. However, we have a few concerns that we want to raise. First of all, of course, is the issue of the cheap imports into the country, which is having a devastating effect on the manufacturing sector. If you remember, we've had one of the most vibrant textile industries in South Africa. It's as good as gone. We had one of the most vibrant leather industries that's good as gone. We had one of the most vibrant plastic industries, it's as good as gone. And that is because we continue to, and I do understand and accept there will be a balance of trade, but not to the extent that it affects your own manufacturing sectors, creates joblessness in the country. So I think it's something that we need to address. The other problem that I have, and a very serious problem is, which I think the Competition Commission needs to do a lot more, is on the high prices and how these prices are being manipulated right from the manufacturer right down to the retailer. And you would find that around about mid of the month, just when they know people are going to get paid, you'd see how the prices start shooting up, and every supermarket puts 5 or 10 items on special, Chairperson, and the rest they put up 40–50% markup. That's why I say there can't be a Black Friday a special. It's the amount of profit that they're making. Lastly, I want to address the issue of when you talk about trade and food products and many others coming into the country, this stuff is being blocked at the border between Egypt and Gaza, not allowing entry. Every container is searched. Food, medicines, and things are removed. The most essential stuff is removed in order to get people to die. How barbaric can it to die of starvation? In other words, a slow death. That is how barbaric the Zionist state of Israel is. The NFP supports this report. Thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize AIC. AIC. Cope. Cope. PAC.
Chair, no declaration, but we support the report.
Thank you. Al-Jama. Al-Jama. I now recognize the ANC. Honorable Altmas. Over to you, ma'am.
Malibongwe, Kamala Makoskas. The ANC supports the BRRR of the DTIC. The portfolio committee oversees the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition and its 18 entities. One of the committee's roles is to assess how the financial and non-financial resources of the department and its entities are utilized in achieving their mandates in relation to facilitating inclusive economic growth and job creation, thus contributing to the reduction of inequality and poverty levels. During its engagement with the department, the committee scrutinized the use of the 11.8 billion budget allocation for the 2022-23 financial year. The DTIC had achieved 97% of its non-financial performance targets and spent 99.6% of its budget and achieved a clean audit outcome. Over 71% of the department's funds were spent on supporting business growth and assisting entrepreneurs to start new businesses, thus ensuring that existing jobs can be retained and creating new jobs. There has been progress in the resolving audit concerns and improving governance within the DTIC's entities, particularly the outcomes of the National Regulator for Compulsory Specifications and SABs. There, however, are challenges that should be addressed, which include the finalization of the policy related to the manufacturing of new energy vehicles. Also, the importance is the ongoing negotiations for the extensions of the United States South African Growth and Opportunity Act and South Africa's inclusion in it. We support the report.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, I put the motion again. Any objections, the DA?
Please note the objection of the Democratic Alliance.
Shall be recorded accordingly.
Madam Speaker, note the objection of EFF.
Thank you. FF plus,
House Chairperson, please note the objection of the FF plus.
all the objections would be recorded.
Chairperson, please note the objection of the ACDP. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Swart. Those objections shall be recorded accordingly. The motion is agreed to. Honourable members, the Secretary will read the 19th order of the day.
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Transport.
I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you, House Chair. I move that the report be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable members, declarations have been sourced and 2 minutes rule applies across all political parties. I now recognize the DA.
Thank you, House Chair. The majority of the 12 entities within the Department of Transport have disregarded the financial compliance of this 2023 Transport BRRR requirement, making this year a particular low point for the Road Accident Fund, RTIA, PRASA, Rail Regulator, SAMSA, and others not being part of this cycle and document. In hindsight, all that remains of the lofty goals, levels, pillars, and keys listed in multiple iterations of the departments and entities' strategic plans are the embers of aspiration and dusty dreams of desire. 3 broad areas of concentration in road, rail, aviation, maritime, and public transportation could have been the game-changing factors. These are social emancipation and a functioning economy, safety and security as facilitators of service delivery, and thirdly, the development of infrastructure that fosters economic opportunity and job creation. Instead, the backlog of road maintenance is larger than ever. The planned submission of the road infrastructure funding policy to Cabinet was not cleared. The GFIP e-tolls have not been closed down. The level of rail services remains lower than what it was in 2019. Aviation calibration is still subcontracted, and not less but more consultants are used by DOT. By connecting people and commodities to markets and opportunities, a competitive and efficient transport system with infrastructure and service provision, which will assist economic growth and development, will be launched in 2024 when the DA is elected as preferred government of choice. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I recognize the EFF.
House Chairperson, the lack of an annual report from entities like PRASA, RSR, SAMSA, and ARSHIA is unacceptable, and we should condemn it harshly as it undermines Parliament. The Auditor General of South Africa reports that the issues facing the department are recurring and have been in other reports over the past years. This means that the Department of Transport has consistently failed to rectify its challenges, monitor progress, and do oversight on the struggling entities. The high number of vacancies in the Department of Transport are concerning, particularly with the high number of unemployed youth graduates in our country. Chairperson, it's not true that the national and provincial road networks were rehabilitated during the period under review, because the people of South Africa can still attest to driving in inadequate roads with potholes. If you drive on the N2 in Kokstad and across South Africa, our roads are in poor conditions and without maintenance. It is also factually incorrect that the Hamba Songe Provincial Road Maintenance Program continues to prioritize rehabilitation and resurfacing of surfaced roads, blacktop patching, blading, and regraveling of gravel roads during the reporting period. If you travel to Eastern Cape as we speak, even the gravel roads are terrible, School children in Cntd are fixing gravel roads because they want to go to school. But the ANC government denies them that right through denying them access to roads. This is why the Auditor General found material misstatements with the annual performance report submitted by the Department for Auditing.
Okay, thank you.
The
Honourable
ANC continues to misrepresent and
Honourable
manipulate our
Dipuo,
people.
your time is up, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I now recognize the IFP.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. The subject of e-tolls has been a burning matter that has reached beyond this parliament into previous parliaments. The IFP has consistently raised our concerns regarding e-tolls in the 6th parliament, and we have used every opportunity to raise this concern from question to declarations. Year on year, we have received promises and heard multiple statements from multiple ministers who have firms but empty promises. We made to South African citizens to scrap the e-tolls, a system clearly devoid of our public participation and best practice governance models, which has led South African to say that enough is enough. However, the government response was to kick for cash to ensure that people are still being billed for e-tolls amounts. It is the government's duty to provide infrastructure so that business can flourish. The government thinks this money is theirs to loot and use however they want. However, these funds should be used to improve existing infrastructure. The poor performance of this department is now evident in the infinity numbers of potholes in our road. It is half-baked plan to fill the potholes in our intangible solutions. Roads are dangerous to drive on, and the department underspending, as highlighted in the report, does not leave us with such confidence in this ability to rectify these matters. Notwithstanding these comments, the IFP do accept the report. Thank you very much, Honourable Chair.
Thank you. I now recognize FF Plus. FF Plus.
Thank you, House Chairperson. House Chair, the Department of Transport is completely failed, whilst it should be the backbone of the economy. The department and its entities were the biggest victims of state capture and are still exposed to high levels of corruption and exploitation. Without a functioning transport system, no sustainable economic growth will be obtained, and the necessary investments will also not occur. The poor performance of this department is visible to all to see daily, and this department should be functioning. But the ANC and its cadres exploited this department and robbed this department, and that is why we do not have a functioning public transport system. That is why we do not have a functioning railway system, and that is why our road system is in such a state of decay. The only way to fix this is to get rid of the ANC in 2024. I thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize ACDP.
No declaration. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you. UTM. UTM. ATM. ATM. Good. Good. NFP, Honourable Sheikh Imam, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chairperson. The National Freedom Party supports the report tabled here today. We note that the department received unqualified audit opinion with findings. Of course, one of the concerns and challenges faced by this department is the issue of procurement. But as we have always stated, this country loses an estimated 40% on goods and services annually as a result of procurement not getting value for money. And that's how, through corruption, many of them are sustaining themselves, starting, Chairperson, at local government election. And unless we close that gap at local government level, no delivery of services to the people on the ground because most of the money is going into the pockets of a handful of people. More importantly, more and more assassinations will take place because it's all about the money. So that's one of the problems. If you look at the airport, if you look at the ports at the moment, if you take the Durban port, chairperson, there's about 97 ships that are anchored there at the moment. And we are fast losing that business because shipping companies are now going to the neighboring ports. And that is a serious concern. The other problem we want to talk about is the accidents on the road, long distance. The quicker we can have an efficient rail network, the better it is. But I want to say most of these accidents, heavy duty accidents, late hours of the night, early hours of the morning because of fatigue. And we don't have any measures to deal with that. Lastly, I want to talk about the issue of what's happening in Palestine, where even ambulances, look at this, ambulances with patients that are about to die, need to be saved, are being blown up by the Zionist state of Israel. That's over. And all that transport that comes through at those borders, I can tell you they have to wait for days to be cleared. This is the plight of the people in Palestine. So if you can blow up an ambulance, then the question is, do you have human blood or animal blood? The NFP supports this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. AIC.
Mr. Honourable Dipuo's gadget, Honourable Chair, no declaration.
Okay, no declaration. Thank you so very much. Honorable Cope. Cope. PAC.
Chair, no
PAC.
declaration.
Al-Jama. Al-Jama. I now recognize the ANC Honor Ramadwa. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. The ANC supports the budgetary review and recommendation report of the Portfolio Committee on Transport. In reviewing the budget programs and entities of the department, the committee recognized both the progress and the challenges which were faced by the department and its entities. The department has reflected implementation of its programs, and its entities have shown improved performance, with most receiving unqualified audits. The transport sector is a critical economic input and driver of the economy, and the implementation of infrastructure projects form a critical part of the delivery of the economic reconstructive and recovery plan. The performance by PRASA in opening up 31 rail corridors is certainly encouraging for commuters utilizing the public transport sector from the working class and poor areas. The restoration of rail station is continuing, with new rail station planned, enabling people to connect with social service and markets is critical for improving the quality of life of communities. The committee will monitor further progress in this regard with keen interest. The BRRR report clearly indicates that the upgrading, refurbishment, and maintenance of national and provincial roads were executed during the period under review. Performance exceeded the set quarterly target.
Honorable Member, your
due
time
to
is up. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
the ANC supports this report. Ndolibowa.
Honorable members, I put before the House the motion again. Any objections?
Absolutely, the DA objects.
Shall be recorded accordingly.
Supported by EFF, we reject the report.
Oh, okay. EFF, FF plus.
Also the objection of the Freedom Front Plus. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All those objections shall be recorded accordingly. The motion is agreed to. Honorable members, I request members to stand and wait for the chair and the maids to leave the chamber. That concludes the business of the day. The House is adjourned.